How you doing, Kyle?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Can you give me one?
Good evening, Lori, council meeting for the Village of Tequesta. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Dearborn,
Here.
Vice Mayor Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Clerks,
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here, I'm here. You can hear me.
We can. We understand you kind of more or less lost your voice, so, but we know you're here, and I think, I know the village manager has indicated you had a number of questions, so he's going to do you the favor, I think, of reading those, and then if you want to add anything at that point in time, feel free to do so. Hope you feel better, too.
Yeah.
I've asked Pastor Brian Sullivan from Cross Point Church to do this evening's invocation.
Good evening. Would you pray with me? Jeremiah 29 says, to seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and to pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. Father, we thank you for the community you have placed us in. It is full of life and beauty, all which point to you. We pray that we would seek its welfare, its good, its flourishing, and the goodness and flourishing of its people. We thank you for the leadership you have placed to serve and lead this community. Mayor Diambra, the council, the various departments, we are grateful for the service and sacrifices they make to do so. For tonight's meeting and beyond, we pray for wisdom to govern in the midst of various interests and views, the welfare and needs of all the people, particularly those who don't often have a voice, a desire to do what is right and good, the ability to work together graciously even when there is disagreement. We pray for tonight's agenda and the overall flourishing of our community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I ask for the approval of the agenda, we are going to add item 24, which is we're going to revisit the charging station agreement. And then we also have under presentations one additional item. So with that, can I have a motion, please, to approve this evening's agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the first item is we had the pleasure and privilege of working with a gentleman here for the last 2 years, Councilman Bruce Prince, who I think has been a very nice addition to this council. He's brought a certain wit and a certain wisdom to many of the discussions, which I think has been invaluable and helping us come together and make some very, very good decisions. Bruce decided not to run again. So this is his last official council meeting. We do have a couple of workshops left.
Yeah.
So we want to recognize Bruce, thank him for his service, and we have a plaque here to present to you this
wow.
evening, Councilman Prince.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. good. Use that one.
I don't get plaques or trophies very often.
Okay, did you want to say something more?
Well, I'll just say that it's been a real pleasure, working with, everyone here from the city and getting to know, everyone here. I mean, from all facets of it, from all the department heads to the city manager, and mayor, and my fellow council women and men, and it's just been a real pleasure. I hope that I've brought some, positive contributions and stuff, during my tenure here, and I look forward to my successor coming in and taking over and doing a good job as well. So just want to thank everybody for their kindness and help. And when I was, a little didn't know really what to do, Lori over there kind of helped me out many times and stuff. So just a big thanks to everybody for being so gracious and so willing to reach out and give a helping hand when you need it and stuff. It's been a real pleasure. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bruce. In the interest of time, because we do have a long agenda this evening, we have a proclamation which is recognizing the Florida Association of City Clerks, which we're going to acknowledge, but Lori said we could pass on the reading of that item, which brings us to item number 3, which I'm sure we'll have some discussion in regards to, and that is the Charter Review Board's proposed charter changes. And that was chaired by Abby Brennan, and I'm going to turn it over initially here to our village attorney, Keith Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. As council will recall, there we go. As council will recall, last year a resolution was adopted that created a charter review committee, which was tasked with the job of looking at the village charter. It's been about a decade since that was done, and bringing back recommendations for any proposed amendments to the council. The resolution contemplated that report would occur at the February council meeting. That is what is before you tonight, simply for the presentation of that report. Depending on what the council wants to do after the receipt of that report, there may be further discussion tonight or at workshops and further direction on how to proceed. But tonight, in accordance with the resolution that created the committee is prepared to make its presentation to the council, having concluded its review of the charter.
Okay, very good. Chairman Brennan, would you like to step forward and address some of the highlights?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Thank you for this opportunity to tell you what the Charter Review Board has been doing for the last 5 months. Keith just mentioned this, but the Charter Review Board was established pursuant to Resolution 38-21, and the members were selected by the Village Council on August 12, 2021. Our board's assignment was to thoroughly review the village charter and make recommendations to the council for possible action. Should there be no objection by council, the board will be dissolved at the close of this meeting. The Charter Review Board is comprised of 5 residents of the village. The board members you selected include Kimberly Kraft, Marcia Nielsen, David Hudson, Gary Vonk, and me. For the record, Abby Brennan. Please rise to be recognized, my fellow board members, please. The board selected Kimberly Kraft to serve as vice chair, and I was selected to serve as chair. Including our first meeting on September 15th, 2021, we have convened on 8 separate occasions for an aggregate of nearly 74 volunteer hours. In addition, the village manager, Jeremy Allen, attorneys Keith Davis and Amity Barnard, village clerk Lori McWilliams, and deputy village clerk Marianne Greaser attended our meetings. Their assistance and guidance throughout the process was valued and greatly appreciated. The village charter is comprised of 7 articles, each with its own subset of sections. There are no substantive recommendations to Article 1, which is the incorporation and form of government, Article 4, municipal powers, Article 5, taxation, Article 6, initiative and referendum, and Article 7, legal status of charter and laws, vested rights, pending matters, and miscellaneous provisions. There are suggested non-substantive text edits throughout the document that Attorney Keith Davis will outline in our recommendation number 5. There are 5 recommendations that we are presenting to you this evening. Would council prefer to have the entire presentation first and then ask questions, or would you prefer to do so after each recommendation?
What do you guys think?
So just do it all at one time.
That's what I'm leaning towards, just present, let's get all the information.
Thank
Once
you.
the public gets it as well, and then we can go to discussion.
Excellent. Recommendation number 1, reference Article 2, Sections 2.01 and 2.06, has 4 components. 1, to increase council member terms from 2 years to 3 years. 2, add new term limits of 2 consecutive terms or a maximum of 6 years. 3, a 1-term waiting period or 3 years before running once again for office. And 4, reorganization annually, regardless of if there is an election. So the selection of mayor and vice mayor would still occur every year. Recommendation number 2, reference Article 2, Section 2.02, continuous 1-year residency requirements prior to serving as a council member. Recommendation number 3, reference Article 2, Sections 2.05 and 2.01, also has 4 components. 1, eliminate the requirement for a special election to fill a council member vacancy caused by death, resignation, removal from office, or failure to qualify. 2, allow a temporary village council appointment until the next general election. 3, eliminate the requirement for runoff elections to resolve tie votes among candidates for council member office. And 4, to provide for the drawing of lots. Recommendation number 4, reference Article 3, Section 3.06, to require a referendum and voter approval prior to dissolving, abolishing, or outsourcing the Village of Tequesta Police Department or Fire Rescue Department. Let's take it to the people. Recommendation number 5, several sections of Articles 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 will be presented to you by Keith Davis.
Thank you, Chair Brennan. So this last recommendation really is a housekeeping type of recommendation, and if the council approves moving this forward, I would envision this being presented to the voters very similar to the way the last charter review was presented, because I don't think there were any significant substantive changes that time, and really there was one ballot question, and it kind of said, should the charter be amended pursuant to the ordinance that was adopted, see the ordinance. The types of housekeeping that we're talking about, there was a suggestion to append a map to the legal description to actually show what the boundary is. There were recommendations. Right now we have a miscellaneous article, which in my opinion things get lost when they're just put in a miscellaneous article. So there's a recommendation to relocate some of that text to more appropriate places in the document. For example, under miscellaneous, there's some provisions that talk about, let me just go to them real quick. Like 702 in our current charter says that all meetings of the council are open to the public. So it seemed more appropriate to put that under Article 2, which deals with the village council, and just move that. Same thing, there's a conflict of interest provision that was relocated. There was some housekeeping language throughout the document in terms of the village clerk's role, and in the initiative and referendum section, the way it's written right now, it speaks about paper ballots and paper applications, and we wanted, the committee thought it was appropriate to clarify that paper doesn't just mean paper. You can also, in the 21st century, we can allow electronic filings. So there was a lot of tweaking the language just to clarify that paper can also include electronic filing. there was some clarifying language in the taxation, that's Article 5, to distinguish the issue of levying and collecting tax versus the issue of spending the tax money once it's levied and collected. It doesn't change anything, but it adds some language that explains that distinction. Let's see. That really is the thrust of it. If when we get to the point where the council wants to direct ballot questions to be placed into an ordinance, we'll have time to really drill in, and I may have missed one or two things, but that's the thrust of this last recommendation. It's truly housekeeping. It makes no substantive changes. It just clarifies some language and brings things more current.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Okay, it's open for council discussion. Bruce, I'll start with you.
Yeah,
And do we want to just take each recommendation one by one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. When it talks about extending the term limits to 3 years, 3 years and stuff, I mean, and this is just discussion here and talking, is that I'm afraid that you would possibly lose a potential good councilman or councilwoman if you extended it to 3 years. Because that's a long time, to do it. I mean, it doesn't seem like it in today's world. I mean, I woke up one morning, I was 60, and, I'm turning 65 in a couple of months. I mean, it sure goes quick, but still, again, it's an awful long time for someone to, give their time that is required, to be a council person. And if anything, if you would like to see a person have the opportunity of extending his time on there, keep it at the 2 years and allow them to be on it 3 years. That way they've got the option of, rerunning again in 2 years. But 3 years is a long time to commit, to it, because we all know and, how much time that it really takes in order to do it, and, sacrifice, and we're certainly not here for the money. So, I mean, it's time sacrifice. So that's just my thought on it. And so it's open for discussion about that on that particular item. We want to go and kind of talk about it as we go around.
Lori?
Just to clarify, you mean 2 years, but 3 terms?
If y'all are, let's say, it says recommended change in council member term from 2 years to 3 years, consistently, implementation language also added. And then they could run 2 consecutive 3-year terms, which is 6 years. But rather than doing the 3-year terms, allow them to do 3 2-year terms. And in that way, they're not locked in for 6 years, but they have the option, should they want to. And two, if something happens, like, with my situation, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here, for another 2 years and so. But if I was on a 3-year obligation, then, then it would create a hardship, replacement and going through the oratory of all that stuff. I just think that the 2 years is more appropriate for the type of seat that it is. Just my opinion. I mean, I don't mind you disagreeing with me.
Just want to make sure you're sticking with the 6 years tops. I just want to make sure you're sticking with the 6 years tops.
Yeah. If they want to, do 6 years, allow them to run for,
Because that kind of ties into my only question was, because in here too, it talks about the buffer of somebody could rerun. So if someone did, let's say it changed to 3-year, 2 terms, so no matter what, we're talking 6 years max. If somebody decided, because we can't find a candidate, they decide they want to rerun past the 6 years, but they have to, wait a year till they can rerun?
A whole term.
A whole term.
Yeah, whole term.
That was really my only question I wanted to clarify on. So they have to wait 1 full term, no matter if it's 2 years or 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
So these are recommendations which I think ultimately we'll want to probably take to a workshop for a more in-depth discussion, but this is an opportunity, obviously, to have a give and take. Kyle?
I see a lot of advantages to the 3-year, 2-term. I like the fact that there's a term limit, so I'd be in favor of keeping that. Was there any discussion on why just 1 term versus, say, wait 2 terms after someone went through their full 2-term 6 years? Meaning, why did you just make it just one term to rest?
There are other municipalities that have the same
Same thing.
type of thing, where they've got a similar government structure that we have. Gardens, for instance, is one that they have term limits, and they sit out a term.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's healthy. I like the 3 years because I feel like it's after year 2, you kind of feel like you're getting going, kind of get a better understanding of what's happening. And it is a commitment, and I do not disagree.
That's a valid point. Not to interrupt you, but that does bring up a very valid point that I really didn't take into consideration, you know, when I was making that remark. But even though with the way that I did recommend it, you could still go back, you know, should you win again.
Right.
Which, you know, I mean, most people aren't challenging stuff on it, so, but, yeah, the 3 terms would actually add the caveat of being able to bring a little bit more to the table, especially that you've got all that experience on that.
I think so. And then the residents don't have to go through an election every year. You get a break, and I think that's a good thing, too.
It's also $27,000 a year in taxpayer money to hold one election.
Sure.
So by skipping that 1 year, you're saving that amount of money.
This year, yeah.
I don't disagree with a 3-year term. I do disagree with limiting to 2 terms, however. Molly and I just attended the District 1 meeting for the Florida League of Cities, and Palm Beach Gardens was there, and they spoke pretty passionately about the impact of term limits, particularly at the local level. That you basically have, in essence, wholesale turnovers, and you can have wholesale turnovers in your councils. And what you lose is you lose the experience that people have. And as you just alluded to, Bruce, and as Kyle referenced, you know, it takes you a while to get going. And then just at the time you're becoming truly effective, you're gone. And so you also lose the history too. You don't necessarily have people that can bring some of the history that preceded, you know, the current environment and current situation. So I know there were 3 council members at this District 1 meeting, including the mayor, vice mayor, and one of the other council people, and they are talking about doing a charter amendment to increase the number of terms for the reasons that I'm discussing. So, and I think it's a little different at the federal and state level. You know, people can turn this almost into a career. I don't think anybody here is looking to turn council service into a career. As Bruce said, you're certainly not doing it for the money. But you do it because you love the community and you really want to give back to the community. And I do think that it can be a challenge, particularly again in a small community sometimes, to get people to step up. We'd like to obviously more people step up and want to run for the councils. So while I don't disagree with term limits as a general rule, I think 2 terms for 3 years is too short a period of time. I would be looking for maybe 3 terms for 3 years. Again, to provide a sense of consistency, continuity, and a sense of the history. And again, not have a situation where you're turning over a council and people are all trying to get their feet underneath them because everybody's new. So that would be my thought on this item. But like I said, we're not going to decide it tonight, but we'll certainly have further discussion.
Let me add
on
one
this
thing
point.
about the history, because I've heard that, and I don't necessarily disagree with, missing on that history. But I look around in this room, and I see multiple mayors that have participated up here, and I see multiple village managers that have been in this position, as Mr. Thomas. So I feel like there's been always a lot of involvement within this community, and I think there's, that history is we'll make sure that history is known just through the job that the clerk does in making sure. So I'm not convinced that we'll lose the history of what happened in the Village of Tequesta. I think it's a group of people that love their community and want to continue to be a part of it, even when they step down and let somebody else come in with new ideas and new thoughts. And I think that's the thing that we've missed the most by not creating terms.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I'm not against the concept of term limits. I do think that while what you've said is true, we've had historically, although maybe perhaps not so much recently, oftentimes when people ran the council, they were very involved in village affairs for a number of years before they chose to run for council. And if you have people who have taken that responsibility upon themselves, then I think it presents a slightly different picture. But then when you have somebody who perhaps has not been involved at all and all of a sudden steps in, I do think you lose a sense of the history. I mean, we had some discussion about, replacement of the fire vehicles, and there was a comment made about what we should have done this years ago. And I basically spoke up and said, you got to remember where we were years ago. We went through the deep recession. We didn't have the funds available. There wasn't funding at the federal, state, or local levels. The council at the time ran lean and mean, along with village management, to try and hold the line on taxes and get through that period of time. Obviously, that situation has now changed, and we found ourselves in a position where we could move forward and address a lot of these capital and infrastructure needs that we have. So I think that was an example of where perhaps it was a bit lost about the circumstances that were faced a number of years ago, and that's what I mean by understanding the history and the continuity and where we've been and how we got to where we are and how that affects to where we're going. So again, I'm not against term limits. I just think, particularly at the local level where people should be very, very responsive to their community, that 6 years is a bit too short. I could live with three-year terms. I think that would be more appropriate. And like I said, some of the other municipalities, as the Mayor Abbey referenced, that have had term limits are wrestling with the fact that they're finding, again, that people are leaving just as they're really hitting their stride, really able to contribute, and that ends up being a detriment to the community. So again, two different points of view. I get it, but that's where I would come down on it.
Ms. Young did add that she's good with the recommendation. She has no other comments for it.
Okay. All right. Recommendation 2 was the question of having a 1-year residency requirement before you could become a candidate. Kyle, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and I'll just leave it at that, and then I'll have one more comment to add to this.
Okay. Lori?
I think that's absolutely appropriate, if not longer. Make sure they're committed and not just floating through. That's just my opinion.
Bruce?
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
And I agree with that on him as well. Kyle, did you add one?
I do. Regarding the candidates, and then that's kind of like where we've been talking about a little bit. My concern is that a candidate is able to walk onto this council without going through an election that is voted on by the residents. Someone that might have a background of a criminal of some sort, or have some type of charges or in that nature. Did you guys look into that by any chance, or is that something that maybe we should add?
We did not
Okay.
look at that, but certainly Keith can, the council can offer up also your own recommendations, if you will. So if the vice mayor wanted to do that, that's something that you can do in your workshop as well. It doesn't just have to be what we put here.
I just don't want someone walking on that just because. And
Keith, what's the legal propriety of that? I mean, we'll get into the issue of constitutional rights, and if somebody's had a criminal charge in their background, they served their time, they've been a model citizen going forward, I mean, is it lawful to preclude them from serving in office? I know it depends sometimes on the nature of what the criminal offense was.
And I think that
We can't get better microphones?
I think that hits the nail on the head. It depends. There is legal precedent that would, I believe, support a qualification requirement that might deal with being convicted of certain felonies or certain crimes involving dishonesty, fraud, misrepresentation, that sort of thing. And we can look more closely into that and get the exact boundaries within which you could put something in the charter if the council wants. In terms of the residency requirement, the law allows a 1 year. There is precedent that has said more than a year is not appropriate. So, but 1 year, there's plenty of legal support for that as well.
I mean, I'd like to at least look into what those limits are.
Sure.
I think that'd be something to be good to add.
Don't disagree.
Ms. Young is good with this recommendation as well.
Okay. Recommendation 3 had to do with the vacancies, temporary appointments, and the tie vote runoff. Lori, I'll start with you.
I don't know if this is the right section. It did have a question that you brought up. It kind of ties into special elections when the candidate doesn't qualify. Is that the part you're talking about?
No, this is where you have, there's
Yes.
vacancy, somebody
Okay, so
leaves,
there's a lot
yeah.
on here. Okay.
Yeah.
I know we kind of all learned a little bit of what our special elections partake, because we almost had one last year. And it was educated to us that we could extend the deadline by 2 weeks. Is that kind of what we're talking about if a candidate doesn't qualify? Or it's just, if a candidate doesn't qualify, we have to
Same
appoint
ballpark.
someone?
The charter provisions that are being recommended for change really are designed to try to eliminate the need for a runoff election or a special election. Runoff election for a tie vote and a special election if a vacancy is supposed to be filled, but doesn't get filled by appointment. So these recommendations, and state law actually provides for the drawing of lots when there's a tie vote. So we kind of borrowed from state law on that and eliminated the need for a runoff election. And then the appointment process that's proposed, we did include, or the recommended language includes a vacancy because nobody qualified. So if you go through, even if you go through the exercise of, we have a qualifying issue, council extends that 2 weeks, and for some reason you still have a vacancy, it allows the council to make a temporary appointment until the next regular election, the next general election. So rather than spending the funds on a special election, you would appoint someone who would basically serve for 1 year, and then they would be required to go through, even though they've only been on for 1 year, even if you had a 3-year term, they would have to go through the process of going through the election at the next regular election, so that you're saving the cost of the special election and you're saving the cost of the runoff in the case of the tie. That really was the motivation behind this.
Okay. So at a workshop setting, I'd like to talk about the details of this section, because for me, I have hesitancy with appointments for council members because they're supposed to be elected by the residents. So if there's appointing going on and they weren't necessarily chosen by residents, I do have an issue with that. So if we could talk about the details of what would happen if a candidate didn't qualify, or if there was a runoff, how much would it cost to do a special election these days? Would the residents want to do that so they can actually choose? I want to go through all those details in a workshop.
Just so I can just say this, the cost of a special election is double. It's $54,000 because you're doing it all yourself within the village as compared to the county being a part of it in a regular election.
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to ask, because when we had the moment last year, we're almost about to extend it for 2 weeks. That was a different scenario than if we got to a whole separate election. I just maybe want to clean up some of the details for this section. So, I mean, obviously in the past few years, we've experienced some new things occurring in our elections. So I just want to be prepared for kind of anything that can happen. So we're not just going through the motions again, chasing our tails, trying to figure out what we're supposed to be doing. Our clerk is great. She's educating everyone every time we go through these new items. So that would be my recommendation, to look into the details more. Thank you.
Bruce?
Are we gonna go through every one of these?
Just the 5 that she
Okay.
referenced.
Okay, all right. No, I'm good on it. I do want to say, though, that I do appreciate all y'all's time on this. This took a lot of time, like you said, 74 hours, a lot of time and effort to put this together. And so, before I forget about it, I just want to thank you for all your time and effort. It was a lot of work to do this, so very much appreciated by me anyway.
Kyle?
Yeah, definitely. Very important for our residents and our community, so thank you. I have nothing to add. You guys did a great job of coming up with some great concepts, so.
Yeah. Just to build on Lori's comments, because I share some of her concerns. And we can get into more details in the workshop, but for example, let's say somebody left a year, whatever, a vacancy occurred a year into somebody's 3-year term. But the next election, because we said with term limits, we would skip 1 year. Let's say the next election isn't for 2 years. Okay, the next generally scheduled election. So is that temporary person served for 2 years? And then if we do put term limits before the voters, and they agree with term limits, whatever they might be, okay, how does that factor in to the term limit? So for example, if you're in the temporary role for what duration of time, can you then run for 2 or 3 terms versus you're precluded and you only can run for 1? I don't know if those details are in here, but I'm
That's a
looking
good
at you,
point.
Mayor, and I'm looking at Keith.
Well, I think, and I'll take this for a minute, Keith, a general election does not have to be a municipal election. So if in fact there's an election in November, and this has occurred during that year, that would be the period that the appointee would
Okay.
be running again.
Okay.
So it's not guaranteed that it's always going to be 2 years or anywhere.
So it's not tied into the March elections that we
No.
have normally scheduled. It could be any
Any general
election
election.
that occurs.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Molly said that the question was asked and answered, so.
Okay, very good. Item number 4 was the proposal to put as a referendum to the voters any effort to dissolve either the police or the fire departments. Kyle, I'll start with you on this one.
That would obviously require the council to vote to put that on the referendum.
Correct.
I have no issue.
Okay. Bruce?
I'm good.
Lori?
I have no problem with that. It's for the people, let's make them decide.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think historically, this village, one of the things that's prized is the fact that we have our own police and our own fire, and they're responsive to us. If we were going to make any kind of change, I think that could only be done with voter approval. It should not be whoever the 5 council members are making that decision. Okay.
Yeah,
and-
it's also interesting to note that the fire department was created by a referendum. That was, before that, it was a county service, and it went to the people, and the people said, we want our own fire
We want our
rescue
own.
department.
Okay. And then finally, recommendation 5 was the housekeeping items, Keith, that you referenced, and the mayor referenced. Any comments on this, or we just take this part to the workshop? Okay, very good. Abby, thank you. Thank you to the whole committee for all your work. Ms. Bradford, you have a question? Please feel free to come up and ask it.
Thank you.
My name is Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail, Tequesta. And as Marcia can attest, I have always not been a fan of term limits, based upon my experience. And here is what I have experienced. It takes an elected official 1 year to realize that a lot of the work that they see coming across the agenda is part of a cycle, budget cycle, this cycle, so on. And then it takes by the 2nd year to realize, oh, that was a cycle, okay? And so they really don't get their stride until they're in their 2nd term. And in this case, it would be the 3rd year, or the 1st year of a 2nd term if it was 2 years. But, a lot of people are in favor of term limits, and I kind of like what Frank said. I mean, I was thinking about the county commission, for example. They have term limits, and their term limits are 2 4-year terms. So that gives them a max of 8 years if they can get reelected. So I think I could live with, 3 3-year terms, because that's a max of 9 years, and it's easier on this local level to throw someone out because, it's just easier. The people of the county commission, there's big dollars involved in those elections and stuff. But the real reason I stood up was that, and it just may be the way that Abby read this, it had to do with I think it's Section 2, Article 2, the point about the term limits themselves. It said, the way I heard Abby say it was 2 3-year terms and something like not to exceed 6 years. Okay, if that's actually the way it's written, then that might mean that this is not, the way it usually goes is you've got these term limits and it might be 2 terms. Then there must be a hiatus, but you can come back. Okay, but the way that sounded was like not to exceed 6 years. That sounds like, okay, you got 6 years, and whether you do it in a half of a term.
Yeah.
Well, it needs to be very clear that that's not a cap.
Right, she said you'd sit out one term. As I understood the proposal, you could have 2 3-year terms. As in this proposal, you would sit out a term and then you could run again
For another 2 terms.
for another 2 terms at that point in time.
Okay, that'd be fine. That's what I had. Thank
All
you.
right. All right, thank you, Mr. Bradford. Okay, any other comments? All right, thank you very much. We're going to now move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Is Molly in favor on this one?
She doesn't have anything on this one.
Okay.
Yes, I.
Okay, thanks, Molly. All right, do we have, okay, so now we come to communications from citizens. Do we have anybody who would like to speak to anything that is not on this evening's agenda at this time? Yes, sir, come forward, please. Give us your name and your address, if you would.
Sorry, real quick, my name's Johnny Collins. I live at 78 Tall Oaks Circle in Tequesta. Moved down here 6 days ago. I met a police officer last night. And I just moved down here 6 days ago. I was working up in New York City. I'm a professional soccer coach. I've been working overseas for the past 25 years with the U.S. military and the U.S. State Department, coaching refugees, girls that have been sex trafficked, child soldiers, things like that. So in New York, I had a program with the NYPD about community outreach, and I was coaching girls, mostly African American or Latin, from low impoverished areas, and it was a big promo for the police department that I'm like pro-blue, you know, I love the military, I love the police force. So I asked the officer last night, is there something that maybe the Tequesta police would like to have some type of community event where I would give my time, and they say, we're gonna have a soccer program or a clinic, and it's all free, and I give my time, and then the Tequesta police force can say, this is what we've done for our community. We brought in this professional coach. We had this thing, and this is a quarterly thing or something like that. And the police officer said, you should go to the town hall meeting and introduce yourself. And that's why I'm here, sir.
Okay.
To just give time to Tequesta and see if there's something, a way for you guys to use my ability and know-how and network.
Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for the work you've done. I think what I would suggest at this point is you have some further discussions with the village manager and the chief, and see if you can come up with something that, you know, makes some sense, and then come back to the council and let us know.
Great. Who are those people?
Can you just make sure the clerk has your number
Okay.
here, and then we'll get in touch with you.
All right,
Mr. Allen, who you're speaking to, and Chief Medina is right over there sitting against the wall.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, communications to council, Mr. Prince. Anything further this evening, sir?
No, I'm good.
Lori?
Yeah, so I have a couple things from EAC that they're going to be putting together some memos with some explanation of what they're looking to advise council on, and Mr. Allen's gonna work with them so he can bring it to council. Just a little overview, one of them is, and they haven't officialized the name, but they're calling it Trees for Tequesta. So basically be if somebody wants to donate funds for a tree somewhere in Tequesta, those details of where it would be are not worked out yet. It would be much like a program like how we would do a brick. You buy a brick, your name is on it, something similar to that. That will be coming forward. As well as they are looking at creating an advisory for a possible ordinance for future redevelopment for buildings near the ocean. It would overall entitle a redevelopment would have to restore dunes and not be grandfathered in necessarily. Again, they will be putting together some backup and a memo with it, and they should be coming at some point to council to discuss in a workshop.
Okay.
That is all.
Very good. Kyle?
A young man from the Harvey Academy named Liam reached out to me and wanted to know if they could, if the village could add a school zone in that area. I guess they have a handful of students in that area, and it's something that maybe we can look into, if that's okay with the council.
I actually got an email from him. I had reached out to our manager and asked him to give council maybe some logistics of how school zones are even implemented, because I don't really know what's required. If it's how many feet, how many students are walking to and from the school. I actually don't know what our area, because we have multiple schools, so would this pertain to all the schools?
Yep, agreed. Just look into it.
I think it's awesome that he reached out, though. Good for him.
Yeah, that's great.
So I have talked with Chief Medina. We're gonna put an officer out there. We will reach out to the school, to one of the leaders over there to just assess the problem, and then we can report back as what we find and, see if there's a need for that. And then if there is, then we can, provide you the information that comes with being a school zone. So let us do some analytics first.
Perfect. No other comments? No other comments?
You're good? Okay. And actually, this evening, in the interest of time, I am going to forego any comments, and we're going to move on to standing reports, starting with the village attorney, Mr. Davis.
Just to mention, I had the privilege of participating in the Resident Academy orientation meeting last night. It seems like an excellent program that our intern prepared and created last year, so that was fun. Councilmember Prince, it's been a pleasure working with you.
Appreciate it.
And unless you have any questions, in the interest of time, I will keep it there tonight.
Everybody good?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the village manager, Mr. Allen.
So two things, the Parks Master Plan, I think we're finalizing the draft, hopefully be able to tie that at the end of the month. Then we will start putting it back out to the community and bring a presentation to the Planning and Zoning Commission in March. And then hopefully back in April, we'll be able to bring that to council for approval. So I know Nielsen, her team's been working very hard putting that together. It was a lot of hours and still a lot of hours going into it. So that's just the update for that. And then the workshop will be Tuesday for the ARPA funds that was requested by council. I think you guys should have that agenda in your inbox. That's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving next to the police department, Chief Medina.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. For the month of January, I conducted 2 community walks throughout the businesses with our new business liaison, Tessa McKay. She had a lot of positive feedback. I will tell you, she knew quite a few people, given back her days at Parks and Rec, but a lot of people were very thankful that the village offers this and that there was no cost and, just looking out for their well-being. So she got a lot of positive feedback on that. She did a great job. We assisted Jupiter Police with an arrest. As you all know, a couple of months back, we have received some equipment through seizure money for rapid IDs, which identifies people who are giving either false name or not giving information. We assisted Jupiter on that. They didn't have theirs on hand, 2 days ago, and they were able to make an arrest on that. So once again, the partnership just with Northcom and everything else that goes with the North End. Met with residents from Tequesta Oaks. Johnny actually just moved to Tequesta Oaks, he shared with me. We had some complaints about speeding. We had the speed trailer out there. Preliminary, just so everyone's aware, and I'll send a report to the manager, is the 85 percentile is 23 miles an hour, which is under, but we're going to be doing some periodic enforcement out there. What we did gather from the data stat is that most of the traffic is around 12 o'clock, so it figures people coming home for lunch, kind of, which was, kind of out of the ordinary. Usually it's early in the morning or in the afternoon. It was more at 12 o'clock, so we'll be there out there during those hours. We addressed speeding concerns on North Dover. We received it from a resident through Councilwoman Young. Same thing, 23 miles per hour was the 85 percentile. We did some periodic, we stopped a few people out there as well, and especially with the new rec center building, we felt it's important to show some presence out there as well. Met with Jeff Owens, our accreditation manager. We did some mock assessments. We're getting there. It's scheduled tentatively right now for April 23rd and 24th. He came in here, just went through our property and evidence. We're updating all our policies and procedures, so we're moving on that. He's coming at least once, if not twice a week from now until then. So in regards to meetings, the usual Palm Beach County Traffic Safety meeting, Law Enforcement Planning Council, the Parks Master Plan with NIOSA, the Palm Beach County Chiefs Association. In regards to stats, our Bureau of Land Management, for the month of January, we had 97 contacts while we were out there. Officers were out there for 40 hours, which, as you all know, gets reimbursed by the Bureau of Land Management contract. The Marine Unit, we were out there 26 and a half hours. That gets reimbursed through Manatee and Bureau of Land Management as well. We had 53 contacts, 2 vessel stops, 2 warnings, and 1 assisted boater that their boat broke down while they're out there. In regards to training, Assistant Chief McGrew and Amber Kraus went to accounts payable training. Spanish for law enforcement officers Caduta. Risk protection orders, all of our officers received training on that, as well as eyewitness identification, the use and control of informants, and active shooter. Some of that was also utilized, as you all know, with our Police One, that we upgraded the system in the briefing room and the conference room. In regards to overtime, actual budget 112, we should project it to be at 34.62. It says we're at 25.57. However, once we get reimbursed for DEA, Manatee, and BLM, we're actually only at 13.3% year to date.
Any questions for the chief? I do have one if nobody else does.
I'll just say, I understand Officer Eric's been doing a really good job and just outstanding, so.
Thank you, he's doing phenomenal. We actually did his numbers, hopefully it's all said and done. He's been a part of, for the 20 months that he's been there, over $3 million in confiscation, which, as you all know, at minimum 20% usually goes to the agency, so he's doing very well.
So is he a part of your yearly awards?
The K-9 officer is, yes. I'm sure he will be. We haven't disclosed that yet. He may be.
Regarding speeding, Officer Palmieri has been parked out in the driveway where we reside, tracking people on County Line Road, which has been an issue. The question I have is, she tracked somebody, in fact, I was standing there talking to her when it happened. She tracked somebody coming by in a Ferrari at 80 miles an hour. She hit him with the lights. Immediately, she said, hey, gotta go. She left, hit him with the lights. He then made a dash into Martin County at speeds in excess of 100 miles an hour. She said, she came back and we were talking, she said, I can't pursue it. One, because of the jurisdictional issue. And I said, well, do we radio ahead to Martin County? I mean, how does that work? And she was telling me, well, there's limitations there because, you know, he's gone. By the time you radio him, try to get somebody notified, try to find who the person was, where he is, et cetera. You know, it's problematic. So I didn't know what the procedures were in a situation like that. You know, this is obviously somebody who had sufficient knowledge of the law to basically take a calculated risk that he could outrun us into another county and escape, you know, arrest and prosecution. What is the procedure in a situation like that?
We would call ahead to that county, especially Martin County. I'm surprised that they went into Martin County because, to be quite honest, everyone goes the other way from Martin County. So I'm surprised in that, but we would radio ahead to Martin County and say you have a vehicle driving erratically at a high rate of speed, you know, heading northbound on US 1 or whichever direction he was going in, but that's the procedure.
Okay. All right, just wanted to check. All right, thank you. Chief Trube, I think we have some special guests tonight as well.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Attorney, and Village Clerk. Normally I bore you with some interesting conversation about some meetings and stuff, but tonight I thought I'd introduce you to two of our finest. Newly appointed Captain Ray Giblin and newly commissioned Lieutenant Andre Dodd. Ray has been with us since 2002. He's been a lieutenant since 2016, and he has served as the deputy EMS coordinator for us for many, many, many years. So he is stepping into the role of EMS coordinator and the captain on A shift. Ray passed his captain's test actually back in 2019 when I first took over, and has been waiting for the position. So he's eager to get started. Andre Dodd started with us in 1999. I had to remember how to say 19 there for a minute. And he's been with us obviously for a long time. He has been our logistics officer in EMS since about 02, 03, 01. Okay, so I stand corrected, since 01. He's also been our infectious control officer for many years. Something the prior infectious control officer said to him was, don't worry about it, you only have to work once or twice a year. So naturally, when the pandemic rolled around, it's about infection control and it's about logistics. So I've said before, I think in front of council, we would not have gotten through the pandemic like we did without the actions of Andre Dodd. Likewise, we wouldn't have gotten through the pandemic without the actions of Ray Giblin. Ray Giblin, and I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth, but Ray Giblin was the guy behind the scenes that was coordinating our vaccination sites. He was the one that went to town of Palm Beach and figured out how to get the system up so we could even schedule people. He was the one who made sure it was going to happen and going to happen the right way. And again, in Andre's case, of course, he played a crucial role there too. He was actually one of the ones administering the vaccines. He was making sure the medication, this isn't normal medication. This is keep it a certain temperature. If you have it out for more than 6 hours, it's got to go in the garbage. The scheduling has to be very precise. So none of this was anything that we had ever done before, and yet we were able to do it in short notice without any errors. So we have two excellent firefighters here, two excellent professionals who have been promoted to, again, Captain Ray Giblin and Lieutenant Andre Dodd. And they probably won't like this, but I'm going to ask Captain Giblin to say a little hello to you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, council. Good evening, residents. Thank you very much. Been here for over 20 years, and it's an honor and pleasure to serve Tequesta. It's a great community. Honestly, I have to say I'm only as good as my crew, and Andre Dodd makes me look good. So I'd just like to say that, and fortunately with Captain Tullis, he helped groom us into these positions, and we really can kind of hit the ground running, and we look forward to it. We have a great working relationship together, so thank you very much.
Well, I think, you know, we've got a great department both in fire and police, and it's important that we mentor and prepare people to ascend when opportunities arise rather than going outside. And the fact that both of you have had distinguished careers. Ray, you and I have known each other a long time because we served on the Public Safety Pension Board together, but I know you're both outstanding, and you know, our hats are off to you, and congratulations to both of you on your promotions.
Lieutenant, do you have anything to add to that? No, sir. Man, a few words. I figured that was going to come. I will add that the lieutenant's test completed at the very end of January was 5 days, involved 2 written tests, a writing assignment, 2 grueling oral boards. You would agree with that, they were grueling. So one was a technical board where we literally get to run the video, stop it, and go, okay, Lieutenant, what would you like to do? You have a crew of 6. The people on the board, on the technical board, were all battalion chiefs, lieutenants, captains, and their single goal is to find your weakness. So a week of going through that, and then I followed it up with a professional board where we spend more time on HR issues and leadership issues and management. It's the same general idea. What can we do to find your weakness? And I will tell you, we have 2 excellent candidates, and Andre Dodd happened to end up on top, but we've got another good one coming down the road. So
very good.
The fire department is in good hands for the near future. Thank you, guys. Okay, now to the fun stuff. So let's see, the January fire chiefs meeting was canceled due to COVID. The training officers meeting was canceled due to COVID. Pretty much this is going to be a repeat. Everything we normally do was canceled by other agencies due to COVID. We do have and this will get you excited. I got a 3-man crew going to Ohio, me included, to do the pre-build with Sutphin. So that is February 28th through March 3rd. So by next council, I'll be able to tell you how that went and where things stand, and hopefully be able to answer the finance director as to when the trucks will be arriving, or at least to give them a ballpark. Regarding the training, once again, we did the 5-day long lieutenant's test. That was probably the focus of our month of January. We do have a class called REDS coming up here, February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. That is the emergency escape model for our surface water rescuers. And we're hosting the class. We've got 18 members. It was actually on consent agenda, so if you guys read that contract, you're well aware of what we're trying to do. So that's looking real good, and the guys are going to get excellent training out of that. The personnel announcements, again, we did promote Andre Dodd to lieutenant and Ray Giblin to captain. That was to respond to Captain Dan Tillis's retirement. We did attend the food truck rally on the 4th. And that concludes the fire department. Regarding emergency management, you're probably well aware that our COVID numbers are improving. I think last month I told you it was going the other way. Everything was going to be ugly for a month, and then we would hopefully get better by the beginning of February. So that's in fact happening. That's the trend. We're in this county right around 15%. I think it's 15.1. An example of January 7th, we were at 31.2%. So we've cut it in half, roughly speaking. That's pretty consistent whether you're looking at Florida cases or U.S. cases, and we just hope it keeps going. We did get hit pretty hard, I think, village-wide. We got especially hit hard in the fire department in January. We just had a lot of people out, so but we did weather the storm, and I think right now we're probably better for it. So moving forward, I don't expect too many more issues unless the next greatest super villain variant comes out to get us, but let's pray that doesn't happen. That's my report, unless there's questions.
Any questions for the chief this evening? All right. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Utilities Director, Mr. Hammond.
Good evening. I don't have anything exciting as Captain Gibbler and Lieutenant Dodd, but we do have a few things going on. First off, you probably noticed all the stuff going on in the back parking lot there. The well rehabilitation project is moved over to well R3. Next week, for 2 days, half of the parking lot is going to be shut down while that work goes in, and there's some large pieces of equipment coming in, and then not too long thereafter it'll shift over to the next well. But that's what you see going on over there. Cross connection control program. Since we've put in place the new program, as well as the tracking and monitoring, I've made some really big strides in. We've gone from 500 or so known devices out there to that we had in our system to we're now pushing, getting close to 900, and starting to bring those up as far as compliance. So that's been a pretty big win for us on our cross connection control. And then last thing, we have Dennis Rick and I are going to be presenting a paper at the Florida Water Resources Conference in April about the customer service benefits that we've seen from our AMI system. So we're going to get to show about some of or talk to other utilities about some of the cool stuff that we've been able to do here. With that, unless you have any questions, that's it for us.
Any questions for Matt this evening? Okay. All right, Matt, thank you very much. Okay, we're now moving on to the regular agenda. The first item is the second reading of an ordinance. Mr. Davis, will you do the honors, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 1721, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9 supplemental regulations, Division 7 home occupations, to revise applicable home occupation regulations in accordance with recent changes in state law, also amending Chapter 78, Article 9, Section 78-294 nuisance, to provide standards for all uses in any zoning district, further amending Chapter 46, motor vehicles and traffic, Article 3, Division 2, Section 4671 definitions to amend the definition of commercial vehicle to include heavy equipment and machinery, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 zoning, Chapter 46 motor vehicles and traffic shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date and for other purposes. This is second reading. One change that we made to the ordinance since first reading, we went back, took a look at the proposed ordinance at first reading as well as the new legislation, and made a determination that we did not have to include the language that provided an opportunity for outside storage in association with a home occupation. So we took that new language out. It's not, we've determined we do not have to afford that opportunity associated with a home occupation. So we removed that. Otherwise, it's the same provisions that you approved at first reading.
This is, as an ordinance, this is a public hearing, so it's open to the public for comment. Seeing none, it is now open for the council for comment. Bruce?
I'm good.
Lori?
No comment.
Okay. We are consistent with what we discussed at the workshop. This is not in response to a state change, correct?
This is.
Oh, this is a response to a state change?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
It does say change the state law, I'm sorry. Okay, so this one will go into effect immediately.
Yeah, these,
The state
the
changes
statute
will-
went into effect in July, so this is already a law on the state books.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's 5-0. Okay, item 9, this is also ordinance on second reading. Mr. Davis?
Mayor, Ordinance 0122, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 2 Administration, Article 5 Elections, Division 1 generally, by creating a new Section 2-234 entitled Electronic Filing of Campaign Finance Reports to require and provide procedures for the electronic filing of campaign finance reports with the village clerk, providing that each and every other section, subsection of Chapter 2 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date and for other purposes. This is second reading. There were no changes to the ordinance substantively. There were a couple of typos that were corrected, but that was the only change.
Okay. And again, this is an ordinance, so it is a public hearing, and it's now open to the public for comment. Okay, seeing none, it's closed. Open to the council for comment. Questions?
None.
Lori, is there anything you need to do from your standpoint to implement this at this point?
I need to, now that we all sent I'll send the agreement over to Easy Vote, and we will go through the process of implementing on the back end, and then I'll do train staff and work with candidates.
Okay. So from an effective, in terms of it actually being effective, I realize we've already gone through the most recent election period, but there will be filings coming up.
It'll be for this next election.
Yes, okay.
In any place.
Okay. All right, a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
To approve? Yes. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Molly, I'm assuming you're in favor?
Yes,
Don't make her.
All right, 5-0. All right, item 10 is a resolution, 722 of the Village Council of the Village of Tequesta, authorizing the establishment of a Tequesta Fire Rescue Master Fee Schedule as identified in Exhibit A, and authorizing the village manager to proceed on behalf of the village, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. Chief Tripp.
Good evening, council. What you have in front of you, again, is Resolution 7-22. It does establish a master fee schedule for Tequesta Fire Rescue. This will provide greater transparency between Tequesta Fire Rescue and our residents, businesses, and visitors. This item was discussed at the January 31st workshop and will supersede Resolution 45-21, which you approved at the September 9th, 21 council meeting. It is being updated to correct a minor typographical error and also to waive emergency medical service transport fees for all full-time and part-time village employees, excluding elected officials.
All right, very good. Any discussion, council?
We pretty much talked this over, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
All right, can I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Molly. Okay, so we're moving on to new business now, item 11. And Molly, I know you had some questions on this, and I believe Jeremy's going to ask them on your behalf, but it's resolution number 4-22, a resolution of the Village of Council of the Village of Tequesta, Florida, providing for the replacement of vacant board and committee member positions, providing an effective date, and for other purposes. There are 2 boards that have vacancies. The Environmental Committee has 1 opening with 2 candidates, and then the P&Z has an opening for an alternate, 1 opening, and we have 1 candidate for that position. Jeremy, do you want to ask Molly's question or comment first?
It was just comment. Molly wanted to thank both who applied. I feel that both of them would be very good in the positions, but her choice for the environmental committee was Brad Freeze based on his qualifications and his background.
Okay, all right. Normally, we ask individuals who have expressed an interest to come forward and introduce themselves to the council and just give us a little background information on why you're interested in the role. I don't know if Ms. Brothers? It's Jamie. I don't know if That's a woman or a man? And then Mr. Freeze, are either of them present here this evening? Okay. Council?
I'd like to make a nomination to appoint Brad Freeze.
Okay.
That was going to be my nomination as well.
Might as well.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Mr. Freeze it is. And the Planning and Zoning Board, we have one opening and one candidate. Are we all in agreement that we obviously will accept that candidate?
I am.
Okay.
I would agree.
All right. A motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Very good. Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 12. This is an application from Gallery Square South for a special exception use. Nilsa?
And Mayor, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. With your permission, I can do the preliminary swearing in and ex parte disclosures at this time. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, your testimony to the village council will need to be under oath, so I will swear both of you in at this time. Do each of you swear or affirm under penalties of perjury that your testimony to the village council on this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Coming back to council, if any of you have had any ex parte discussions, site visits, et cetera, regarding this item, those would need to be placed on the record at this time.
Site visit, I've been in this area.
And I had a conversation with the owners of Perk when they called me to express some frustration with the process moving forward.
Thank you. Anything from Councilmember Young?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mayor. Then we can.
Lance, I saw Nelson's name there. I didn't realize you were going to be presenting it tonight.
We can
so.
proceed.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. For the record, Lance Lilly, Community Development Planner. The application that you have in front of you is for a special exception use in Gallery Square South. The applicants, Perk, are looking to see a 6-foot-high dumpster enclosure, as well as some interior renovations. On page 3 of the staff report, it just pretty much gives a little bit of staff analysis that we provided. So currently, the Gallery Square Shopping Plaza has a total of 11,646 spaces, square footage. Based on the plaza square footage, the plaza is required to have 47 spaces. And however, the plaza has more than that, it exceeds that, it has 85 spaces, which exceeds the requirement by 38 spaces. What the applicant wants to do is they want to include, put a dumpster and an enclosure in two of the spaces. So with that being said, the applicant is here if there's any additional questions that need to be asked. That's about it.
Okay. And the purpose is to provide for waste?
Yeah, waste. Right now, Perk has, my name is Louis Gugliotto, by the way. I'm an engineer and a project manager trying to get this motivated and moved on. Right now, they have 6 garbage cans, and you can see them from the road. And Gilbert also has another 4 next to it. So we would like to have everything consolidated under one enclosure, which we had engineered. So it would look good from the street, as well as having hurricane-proof doors in front of it.
Okay, so it'll shield the waste containers, and like you said, provide better security in the event we have a storm situation.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Questions from the council?
None. Great idea.
Lori?
Definitely an enhancement. And my only question for you guys was just, the new dumpster will be the same or more capacity to hold the garbage, correct?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
I just want to make sure you guys are actually just thinking about including more, especially with you guys growing.
Right now,
too.
there's 6 garbage cans twice a week.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
hate for you
so,
guys to have something
yeah.
too small, then
We
that's all.
talked to Waste Management, they recommended a 6-yard twice a week, and they're on board, so.
Well, hey,
If
anything
it has to be
that's-
any bigger, we'll make it bigger. The enclosure is big enough to accommodate a bigger
Anything will
dumpster.
look better than what's there now.
Yes.
Waste Management also, if you open up your staff report that was provided, they provided a letter that says they can service the area, and they reviewed and actually did an inspection, just to show the ingress and egress as well as if they can provide service for the area.
Has anybody reached out to the neighbor where this is going to go on their, lined up on their property line? And any comments from them?
We provided a 300-foot radius which is standard for special exception uses, and we haven't received any comments from anyone.
I think Molly had a comment here.
Well,
Mr.
her
Allen.
only question, and I think it was answered, but if you'll just repeat it, this dumpster is serving the shopping center or the adjacent properties, or is it just for Perk?
It's just for perk.
Okay.
So some of those trash cans aren't gonna go away.
The perk trash cans will, but. yeah,
The 6 perk trash cans, but the 4 next to the 6
they'll
are
still
not.
be there.
Ew.
But the perk garbage, the Gilbert garbage cans don't have any food in it or waste. It's more of construction stuff that they use for their electrical. I mean, if they want to talk to, the enclosure's big enough to put 2 dumpsters in if it's an issue to put another dumpster in for Gilbert.
So can I just actually clarify then? So is all of that perk? That's in the back?
No, 6 of those are perk and 4 of
Because
those are
all of those are
Gilbert.
overflowing, whether they're food or
Yes,
not.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was under the understanding that y'all were both gonna be using the dumpster. 'Cause when you described it, y'all had so many trash cans, and then your neighbor had so many trash cans, and so is your neighbor still gonna have his own independent trash cans outside of the dumpster area that he's gonna have to put his stuff in?
That was not addressed when we went ahead with this. It was concern for perk because of their type of waste. It wasn't for, even though it's obviously better for aesthetics, but that was not addressed with Gilbert.
I would be more open to seeing all of them use the confined dumpster area.
So this isn't a landlord improvement, this is a.
I know.
If the council would like to recommend, there could be a condition of approval.
I mean, why are you gonna go ahead and do that, and you're still gonna have trash cans sitting on the outside of it?
I think the owner of Perk's is the one that's going through the process of paying for this versus the
They are.
landlord.
Mhm.
And so and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know the facts on this.
That is correct, and it's a considerable expense. You wouldn't think it would be, but it has to be built to meet the 160-mile-an-hour wind load. So we're talking about building like a bomb shelter out there. It's not a bunch of fence we used to put up and put a dumpster behind. Now it's a poured concrete enclosure with steel doors in front of it.
And you're saying that it's large enough to accommodate Gilbert's
It's large
trash?
enough to accommodate.
6 yards.
I guess I would not want to make it a condition because I don't know that we can force Gilbert to utilize that facility, but I think we could at least encourage
Okay.
PERC to have conversations with Gilbert and see if they would, agree. Because I do think from an aesthetic standpoint, it would be beneficial. Okay. All right. Can I have a
I
motion?
actually made the enclosure, when I had it designed, with the intention of 2 dumpsters.
Okay.
In the event that this question came up.
Okay. All right. Any further conversation? Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, that's approved 5-0. All right, thank you, gentlemen, both.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is the approval of the annual report of the Village Infrastructure Surtax Citizen Oversight Committee. Nelsa, how are you?
Good
this
evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. The report that is in front of you is with regard to the Village Infrastructure Surtax Citizen Oversight Committee. The meeting is conducted once a year, and in this case was conducted on January 20, 2022. And the committee found that that expenses that were presented were according to the ordinance that the council had adopted previously. So if you have any question, our finance director is here, and then this was recommended for approval by the committee.
Very good. Any comments from the council? Bruce, Lori?
Okay.
I don't think Molly had anything on this one. Motion to approve, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are 5-0. Moving on to number 14, again, this is an ordinance. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0222, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9 supplemental regulations, Division 2 site plan review, Section 78331 required development standards, required facilities and infrastructure, and Chapter 78, Article 10 off-street and on-street parking and loading regulations, Section 78691 minimum standards, to clarify parking and sidewalk requirements generally and for certain overhang areas, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading.
Yes.
Nelson.
This is our continued effort to clarify our code. So we included graphics and so the first graphic is showing where could be a sidewalk and the distance between the street, there are 4 feet, and then the 5 feet sidewalk. The second graphics, which I think is very important, is when you are on a parking lot situation, if you want to, in this space to park, and you have an overhang, the car overhang onto the sidewalk, then your sidewalk needs to be wider. It needs to be 7 feet because the car, basically you are avoiding to use wheel stop. You are using the sidewalk curve as a wheel stop. So your sidewalk must be wider. So this is, once we are reviewing site plans, this graphic will be very, very useful to show to the applicants. And those are the 2 major graphics and clarifications for the code.
Okay. All right. Again, this is it's an ordinance, so it's a public hearing. It's open now for public comment. Do I have some? Oh, Mr. Bradford.
Tom Bradford, 44 Chestnut Trail. I want to bring something to your attention in regard to, it looks like it's subsection 7, subparagraph A, and it's the next to the last sentence, and it reads, all sidewalk improvements shall be installed and maintained by the adjacent property owner. I have direct experience with this one, and you will discover that it's virtually impossible to make an adjacent property owner maintain infrastructure, including sidewalks, that are in the public right-of-way. And the previous language before what I just read implies that it is within the right-of-way that this sidewalk would be placed. And so I wanted to let you know that what you can do is say that they are required to keep the sidewalk clean and free of debris, and like in Palm Beach, they also have a 10-foot clearance over the sidewalk because they have a habit of letting ficus grow over the sidewalk. But you got to make that, so the property owner has got to keep it clean and free of debris, and sometimes, pressure clean it, etc., like I do at mine. And but you can't make them maintain it, meaning, and you don't, even if you could, you wouldn't want to, because Bruce's maintenance might be better than my maintenance, and you got trip and falls out there. So it really should fall to the government to do this, because trip and falls will send you to the poorhouse real fast. So I just wanted to point that out. It should be the government's responsibility to maintain that which ends up in a right-of-way. That's my only point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nelson, would you like to further discuss that?
Yes, this is the first reading, and if the council would like to recommend that, we can look at it closely, Keith and I, and bring it back for the second reading.
Well, when you use the word maintain, what precisely did you have in mind there? Was it more similar to what Mr. Bradford just described, or was it?
Yes, this is an existing code language. I mean, we didn't change anything. That is what is in the code right now with regard to that. And yes, we were thinking more like keep it up, a cleaning or something, okay. But we definitely can look at it to be more precise.
Keith, what's your?
I would have no objection to that.
Okay, all right. Any further comments from the public? All right, it's closed to the public. It's now open to council. Any further conversation?
I mean, he did bring up a very valid point, but I think it needs to be looked at as well.
Yeah, so to expand on that, I would be open to changing, the word is actually improvements, which could be taken as changing even the material. And again, maybe one does better than the other. And I want to say this came up before on Riverside Drive, where the homeowner redid part of the sidewalk and it wasn't done the correct way to village's standards. So I could see this being a similar type situation. My other thing I wanted to ask you, Nielsa, was when we're looking at the adding the 2 feet to create that buffer, does that have to be sidewalk or could it be landscaping that a car can't go past?
That's a good consideration. Most of the time, they just want to be, they don't want to do planting, a 2 feet planting, because
But would it be
it's
an option?
There could be an option, yes, definitely. The whole point was here that if they want a cantilever, if they want to overhang the car, they need to provide either 2 feet for landscaping or wider the sidewalk, because many times they want to overhang on that 5 feet, and that is just a problem, a hazard problem, So, yes, it could be landscaping. I don't see any problem with that.
Aren't you using that sidewalk as a car stop?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, then landscaping, I mean, you can't have landscaping in there if your car's gonna overhang over that.
No, they will, in the case that they have,
4 feet.
in the case that they have landscaping, then definitely we will need a car stop, so.
Right.
Wouldn't the drawing above require that car stop and then 4 feet and then the 5 foot?
Can you repeat that, please?
Wouldn't that require you've got a drawing a little bit further up or on a curve where you have a car stop and then you've got 4 feet barrier and then you've got a 5 foot sidewalk?
We are trying to do the minimum possible. I mean, developers, and they always look at every little feet, every little inch. So we are trying to do, right now already we have a problem with them wanted to go into the 5 feet. So I said, we would like to improve our code so they will not be encroaching into the 5 feet. So we are trying to do the minimum necessary.
Do we want to make a motion on this evening, or do we want to take it back and have it reworked and have it brought back to council?
I say we make a motion and add to the conversation that Mr. Bradford added and keep looking at it.
We can make that change for second reading and advertise it correctly and make sure the text is.
To keep it clean and accessible.
Right, but you also want to address the issue of the width and whether it's.
I just wanted to get some clarification, because it's often talked also in EAC, stop adding so much concrete in parking lots. That's kind of where I was going at, is what was your mindset for that? But I understand where you're going with it, to stop the vehicle.
Exactly. This is to stop the car,
Isn't it to provide space at least 5 feet?
Yeah,
for
on the
someone
sidewalk itself.
that-
Exactly. If you, basically, we are saying with this, if you want to use the sidewalk as a wheel stop, then your sidewalk needs to be wider. So you cannot be using a 5 feet for the,
So there's still 5 feet of usable sidewalk for pedestrians.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. That's what we are doing. We are,
Right. So we're saying we want to use language similar to what Mr. Bradford suggested. That was the motion. And with the extra 2 feet of concrete that Nilsa has proposed here, we're going to leave that as it is.
I don't necessarily agree with it. I mean, you're taking a sidewalk from 5 feet to 7 feet when you could use a car stop in lieu of the extra 2 feet. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, you're using the sidewalk instead of the sidewalk for a car stop.
So could you make it a requirement where the car stop has to be X amount of feet from the sidewalk edge?
well, many developers, they don't want to use anymore the car stop, because they said a trip hazard. They don't want to have that into their parking lot, to have the little,
So they want the curb of the sidewalk, obviously, to be the car stop.
Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time, you know, where you extend the sidewalk out, then you still pour a D curb out there, and then you butt your concrete sidewalk up to the D curb. I mean, it's just more concrete. I mean, it's all it is. You're just adding another 2 feet of concrete. I mean, that can go for a long way. If you got a big parking lot, you're talking about a 7-foot sidewalk in lieu of a 5-foot sidewalk, if I'm understanding this correctly, and you're getting rid of the car stop.
Well,
Yeah.
could you
That's
have,
another.
could you have this as an option where the developer could either choose to use the car stop at the appropriate location, or they could widen the sidewalk?
Exactly.
So
We
it
are
is an
just-
option?
Yes, this
We
is
said
an
we could make
option.
that- We could make that part of the motion.
Yeah, no, this is an option, exactly. Because we have many requests that, oh, I just gonna use the sidewalk as a, I said, well, that's nice. However, you are reducing the walking area for the, for the pedestrian, and it's dangerous.
So would somebody like to restate the motion in such a way
Well, I
that?
think there's already a code in there for using a car stop.
Yes, you can use a car stop, but if
But
you,
we're-
this
but
is
we're
an
saying
option.
We're giving them a definitive option of either.
No.
No, is that what you want to do, where you say either you use the car stop, or if you choose not to, then you've got to widen the sidewalk by the 2 feet in order to accommodate the overhang? Right now, that's not a requirement, correct? As
Well,
it exists today.
Yes, right now, basically, we have a car stop or the 5 feet sidewalk, But if they want to eliminate the car stop and want to use the sidewalk, then I'm saying, well, if you want to do that, please, we will need a wider
So you're
sidewalk.
giving them
It's an option.
Right.
So you're holding strong to the 5-foot sidewalk for safety for people
Yes,
walking.
yes.
Well, that's really a requirement though, isn't it?
Yes, it is a
Yeah, but see,
requirement.
You can't
but-
deviate from the
sneak
5
past
feet.
it.
You gotta maintain a 5-foot pedestrian
I
sidewalk.
know,
Right now,
yes,
our
but,
code doesn't address that.
but we
They're
have
not.
very creative applicants.
Okay, so this ordinance would make clear that they have the
Yes.
option of the car stop or the wider sidewalk, but they have to do one or the other.
Exactly,
Okay.
because the code has to serve, is in our toolbox.
Okay.
So when we are reviewing site plans, we are measuring inches and feet, and we need to comply with the code. So this will extremely clarify the two options that they have.
So I've already got a motion on the table.
All right,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. All right. Moving on, with again, we have another ordinance. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0322, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 62, Article 4, Division 1, Section 62-92, Level of Service Standards, and Chapter 66, Article 5, Division 1, Section 66-161, General Standards, Level of Service, and at Chapter 78, Article 9, Division 2, Section 78-331, Development Standards, Required Facilities and Infrastructure, to update the Park and Recreation Level of Service Standard in conformance with the Village Comprehensive Plan and provide general consistency edits therein, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 62, 66, and 78 of the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Tequesta shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date and for other purposes. This is first reading.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, this is another ordinance. It's part of our glitch list that we always keep up, trying to improve and trying to provide consistency in our code. So I would like to enter into the records what is actually right now our comprehensive plan. The goal of this ordinance is to make our zoning code consistent with our comprehensive plan. So please allow me to enter this into the record. So the page that you have in front of you now is our current comprehensive plan, and as shown there, it has the neighborhood park level of service, 2 acres per 1,000, and the community park, 2 acres per 1,000. So, and if you compare this language with the code, you will see that the current code is much more extensive, it requires other, items that are not included in our comprehensive plan. So we are, the goal is to provide consistency.
Okay, again, this is an ordinance, so it is a public hearing. It's now open to public for comment. Okay, seeing none, it's closed to the public. It's now open to the council. Any questions or comments on this?
So we're removing the level of service that the village agreed to with regards to having baseball fields per residence? Am I getting that correct?
Yes, we are removing those because they are not included in our comprehensive plan.
And basketball courts and soccer fields, but we're keeping beach access easement and removing beach?
Yes.
I don't know if I like all that.
I think the question here is, absent Tequesta Park, which we do not own, where would you provide some of these facilities?
That's why we rent Tequesta Park.
But it's a lease, and it doesn't, there's no guarantee that that will continue to be within our purview and in our control forever and ever and ever. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nils, we do have those capabilities today because we do lease Tequesta Park and we do have management and oversight responsibility for it. But it is a lease, we do not own it. So do we want to tie the comprehensive plan and its requirements to a parcel of land that, while it meets the requirements currently, in the future?
My answer would be yes. Okay.
What'd you say, Cal?
My answer would be yes. I think it's part of our responsibility municipality to continue to be forward-thinking. And if we think that that's a possibility that we're going to lose that piece of property, we need to start thinking of another alternative.
Could we reconstruct the lease for perpetuity?
Potentially. Anything's possible.
I mean, it's, how long we had it now, and just go ahead and enter into
We've
an
had it
agreement
for
with it.
50 years, and we've got about 35 years left, I think, on the current lease. I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. I think these are all admirable
I appreciate what you're
goals.
saying.
But again, we don't own that land, and we get to include it right now because of the lease arrangement that we have. But it's not guaranteed, and if for some reason the state, and it's actually considered part of the Jonathan Dixon Park, the state decided to take that back, okay, and we're saying our comprehensive plan, these are the objectives. I don't know what land we have within the village that would allow us to meet some of these objectives, so.
Well, I think it's a very valid point. I mean, what you're saying. I mean, realistically, legally, from a legal standpoint and stuff, I mean, it's correct. I mean, is that right, Keith?
And Nilsa can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we rely on Tequesta Park to meet our level of service for Parks and Recreation. Even though we don't own it, we do rely on it to meet the level of service that we call out in the comprehensive plan.
That's exactly what I was
is that a
thinking.
concern for us, though, the fact that we don't own it and we are under a lease for 50 years or 35 remaining? I mean, is that a concern that we should have a discussion or something about? I mean, it sounds like to me it is.
Well, in addition to Tequesta Park, what about Linear Park? Is that part of our parks?
Yes, it's
do we
part of-
rent that space? Yes. What about the HOA space in Country Club? Is that part of our park space?
No, that is no part.
Okay. So I mean, park space is very small here, right? And it's something that we need to protect, and that's the last thing that I want to do is give I understand this is our comp plan and it states that, and it doesn't include some of this stuff, but I would rather see us update the other plan.
Well, I mean, the comp plan at this point does include this stuff. I think what I'm saying is,
where
do we, for example, we have tennis courts in Tequesta Park. The point is that we use Tequesta Park currently to meet the commitments that we have in our comp plan. My takeaway from reading this when we got it from Nilsa was she was making, correct me if I'm wrong, modifications to reflect the fact that while we do have Tequesta Park today and it does help us meet these requirements, there's no guarantee we'll have it forever and ever and ever. So do you want to put these requirements into the comp plan at this point in time when we're making these modifications. Again, we have them today, because we do have that lease, and we have it for 35 more years, so it's not going away. We're not giving away the tennis courts, we're not giving away basketball, none of those things are gonna change right now today.
But that's, one's an ordinance, one's a comprehensive plan. I'd rather see us update our comprehensive plan to match what we
One
currently have.
thing is that I did not mention is that in 2018, when we actually 16, 17, and adopted in 18, the comprehensive plan had this and it was striped through. So it was, because this level of service are too specifics. So the basketball, the tennis, you know. So for the village, it was more tailored to use neighborhood parks and community parks. Why is that? Because community parks are usually larger and actually embrace additional programming, such as basketball courts, but we do not need to be specific. So to be clear, if I show you the comprehensive plan in 2017, they have all of this, what was in the code. However, through workshops and through the decision, it was approved to eliminate those. So what you have in front of you is what was adopted. So at that time, we were needing to, clean up our code to make it consistent with the comprehensive plan. So we already had that on the past, and we strike it through.
So let me ask you this question. So currently, are we meeting that 2 acres per thousand for neighborhood parks?
Yes.
Are we meeting that for 2 acres for community parks?
Yes.
Totally separate?
Yes.
Separate situations?
So if you take away Tequesta Park,
You don't meet it?
and I know that there's been a resident who has consistently said that to us.
No, yeah, then we will.
That we don't meet.
We will be short.
So my point is, this is an ordinance, and do you want to put something into an ordinance that obligates you to something, not that it can't be changed in the future, that is being met by a parcel of land that while we lease it is not ours, we don't own it, and there's no guarantee we'll have it forever and ever and ever. And I'm saying, I don't know that I don't know that an ordinance is the right place to.
I hear you, but the ordinance is stating that 2 acres per thousand for a neighborhood park or a community park, you lose that rent, you don't have that ordinance, it's not being followed.
We're not in compliance.
We're not in compliance, even if we take it as is.
Now, the likelihood of that happening is probably pretty darn slim, but still, again, if you want to stay within the legal confines of what this is saying and what you've got to do, then we need to get it written differently for the lease of that park.
So I agree with Kyle, and Nielsen, I'm gonna ask you, when does the next comp plan review come up?
I need to look at the State Department website, but it will come out, I think it's 2023 or 2024.
Because I know when you're all talking about the lease on Tequesta Park has another 30-something years to, I mean, that's quite a bit of time.
Yeah. And I understand the value of having it more of a generic.
Yes.
It gives us more flexibility year over year to be able to, hey, we don't need, no one's playing on the basketball court. Let's go ahead and throw in a new game, whatever that might be. So I understand that, and I'm okay having it more generic. I just want to make sure we all understand that we are removing the very specifics. And Tequesta Park is vital to maintain this ordinance and our Tequesta Comprehensive Plan.
So you want to unstrike?
No, I'm okay keeping it general. I am okay keeping the ordinance general. But I just want to make sure we understand what we're saying.
Right. Well, but what she's indicating here is, again, consistent with the changes in the comp plan, you've got a number of items here that would be struck. I mean, again, our goal obviously is to maintain these things, and as long as we have Tequesta Park, we can. And, perhaps the idea of going back and seeing if we could extend the lease even further at this time. Obviously, we are working with our state representatives to get an appropriation to hopefully enhance this park significantly for the benefit of our residents as well as others. Maybe the idea of going back to see if we can get a further extension makes some sense at this point.
The only other thing, clarification, do we currently own a mile worth of a beach?
I was going to ask that. How much do we actually have for beach access?
I need to check our comprehensive plan. I can provide you that specific. That was part of the updated comprehensive plan. So I do have that information. Not right now with me, though.
I know we can't get more beach, but for 31,000, I don't think we're gonna ever get to that point.
Okay, so are we saying we are okay moving forward with this ordinance as it currently is proposed?
I'm curious if.
I'm gonna say no for today.
Okay, so do you want to vote no, or do you want to say, let's table this, take it to a workshop, and let's work it through?
I'd be open to working through some of the details that Tequesta Park entails and the beach numbers as well.
I think this is just premature to our, aren't you coming to us with a
Park
park plan?
plan in April.
In April?
Yeah, we can leave it. I mean, if the council does not want to continue with the ordinance, this was just a simple cleanup of the ordinance to make it consistent with the comp plan.
It's just a
But we
touchy
can just
subject.
leave it exactly the way it is, so it was just part of our regular, trying to be consistent with the current comprehensive plan, but nothing changes, basically. Nothing changes.
I would just recommend that you bring it back to us right after we go over the park plan that is coming to us in April.
But nothing will change from the park with regard to this ordinance, so.
I think we need to get the verbiage on our lease changed so that we can legally, in my opinion, stay in compliance with this. Because if it's the lease right now, I mean, they can, like, Mayor DeAmber said, that they could come to us next year and say, hey, we don't want to have the park there anymore. And then we're not in compliance, is that correct?
Well, that is part of our level of service is the park, for community park, So we always, for years and years, have in compliance because we have the park.
I believe there is some criteria in the lease.
So and I can address that, Mayor. The lease requires us to have an approved management plan for the park. And our approved management plan does contain reference to both children and adult activities, such as those that are listed in the chart in the code. So the management plan, which has been approved by the state, does talk about adult and youth. I don't remember exactly, but basketball, baseball, tennis, that type of thing. So those types of activities are in the approved management plan. That is a requirement of the lease agreement.
So I would follow up on the Vice Mayor's suggestion. Let's defer this. I understand it's a cleanup item, but let's defer it. Let's get the park plan presentation in April. And then if we want to come back to this and address this thereafter, that probably makes the most sense at this point.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Item 16, again, we have another ordinance.
So can we, just for the record, Mayor, can I either get a motion or council consensus to take no action on this tonight?
I make a motion to take no action tonight.
Concur.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Item 16, again, another ordinance, first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0422, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, adopting an amendment to Comprehensive Development Plan in accordance with the mandates set forth at Section 163, 3184 Florida statutes to add and adopt a private property rights element, providing for transmittal to the State Land Planning Agency, providing conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading.
Yes. Nelson?
Yes, last year, 2021, the state of Florida adopted House Bill 59. House Bill 59 is growth management and modified Chapter 163, 3177 Florida statutes that basically is requiring each local government to have one new element or chapter into their comprehensive plan. So, and the name of that new chapter or element is property right elements. So, every local government is going through this. It's an state mandate, and then we are including a new chapter in our comprehensive plan after adopting this. After tonight, we need to transmit this language to the state and other agencies, and then we have to wait to see if we have any comments.
Okay, is what's proposed, does it do what's necessary without doing any more or any less?
We
With
are,
respect to the
this is
private
pretty
property rights.
standard language now.
In my opinion, this will get us
State approval?
approved by the state. In my opinion, this is the minimum required
Okay.
to get us through the process.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No.
All right, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous, 5-0. Okay, moving on to item 17. I think this is a resolution of the Village of Council of the Village of Tequesta authorizing amendment to the fiscal year special law enforcement budget. And I know Molly had a comment on this, and I believe you have her question, Jeremy?
Yeah, let's go through the presentation first, and then maybe it answers her question.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Before you have a resolution to purchase 2 mobile virtual reality simulators, software, as well as additional equipment. Simulators will be purchased from Inveris at a cost of $62,500, again, coming out of the Special Law Enforcement Fund, which is seizure money. I have a quick video that I'd like to show you just so you could see, have an idea of what exactly it does, and then I'll speak about it.
Training is all about realism. It's always mimicking what we do in real life. So the closest we can get to that, the better.
Customers used to say, hey, look, it would be really nice if we were in this scenario. One of the things that we haven't ever been able to do is what we call perspective shift, and that's being able to look around corners, being able to look at pockets, look at a person and really walk around them.
Now we're able to immerse a student in a 360 world. That's why we call it VRDIC. VRDT stands for Virtual Reality Decision and Tactics.
Every time we put somebody in there, the very first thing that goes, well, I'm actually here. They can look down, they can see their hands, they can see their weapons.
It is very customizable. The system has a authoring station built in to where instructors can go in there and select any part of this city that we have.
You can do adjustable light levels. You can change out non-player characters very quickly.
Now the instructor has a microphone and a push-to-talk feature where he presses the button, and now he is speaking as if he was a subject. And de-escalation is endless because now we're having a one-on-one conversation, and I'm going to make that officer work. It's not about shooting or not shooting. It's about understanding the situation that's going on and then figuring out how to peacefully resolve it. Verbal de-escalation is huge.
So at the end of the day, we want not just the officers, but want the public to know that, hey, we're putting these officers in stressful situations before they ever go out into the real world. The only way you can do that is to try to get those officers to actually replicate what they may actually encounter in real life.
Add props, sounds, cars. He can sit there and change basically everything in that scenario and gear towards whatever training that they have.
Pistol, OC, tasers, anything that a police officer is carrying, you can actually simulate it inside of VR.
We were pioneers in the market back in 1984, projection-based weapons, wireless weapons, and now the future, which is a VR system.
Our system was built with law enforcement and military input from our subject matter experts to make it the best system.
As an instructor and a trainer and a developer of the VRDT system, even though I'm testing the system out on new features, I find myself reacting physically to things, and then I laugh about it. I'm like, wow, I just did that. Because I'm even fooling myself as I'm testing it. It's made me believe in the system that we make and provide for law enforcement. It's great.
So just to give you a little background, as far as the advantages of why it would be great, this differs from, say, Palm Beach Gardens, where they have, and I think some of you have been there, where it's a room, and you need a large size room and a screen and what have you. This, you need a space of 10 by 10. So we could, and it's portable, we could literally take it anywhere in regards to training. We actually set it up in the EOC, and it takes about a half hour, 40 minutes to set it up, but once it's set up, it's all there. One of the things we request for is for 2 units, because most of the times, if one officer, it'll be a second officer responding on a high priority job or something to that. So I wanted the officers, from team building perspective, but also to kind of know each other's reactions or counter reactions to things that may be happening. That way they train together a little bit more. Obviously, it would help us it would cut on overtime in regards to training, because we no longer have to get in their vehicles, drive to Palm Beach Gardens, drive somewhere else. We could set it up in the EOC, and if we have enough coverage out there, we can grab one of the officers off the road and say, all right, let's go through 4 or 5 scenarios, and let's see, how you react. The great thing about it is, one scenario, you could change it in 1,000,001 ways. The training officer, the commander that is at the helm, if the officer doesn't show a command presence, then he can escalate that situation to kind of have the officer kind of change in regards to, okay, your message isn't coming across. Like I said, you push the talk so, the suspect in the scenario can talk back to the officer. So the officer is communicating back and forth, and the trainer would say, okay, he needs to take it to the next level or what have you. It helps in regards to de-escalation. It's not, like you said, just shoot or don't shoot. It's, okay, how do we get from here to here? The great thing about it is once the scenario is done, we can play it back completely. So you have real-time critique right back and say, hey, you could have done this, you should have done this. Like you said, it's 360. You didn't see someone with a gun on the left-hand side. What were you looking at? So it kind of, you move around in the building. I had my officers on that squad each try it out, including Pastor Paul, who's here, and the manager. And it's just the realism, just being there, just in regards to them talking and you communicating. You kind of forget that it's an actual, virtual reality. You kind of get in the moment. So, again, no large space. The great thing is we don't have to rely on other departments. Unfortunately with COVID, Gardens for a time when it wasn't allowing other departments to utilize their space, obviously because of COVID and what have you. With this, once again, if we want to put an officer, and say, hey, you need some retraining. Once we go to the firearms range, let's put them back on there. We have the ability to do it ourselves and not rely on someone else. The most important thing about it is just repetition and muscle memory, right? So going through different scenarios, the officers are kind of get accustomed, all right, this is how I'll handle it. So when it's the first time, God forbid, if they're in that situation, this isn't their really first time. They've kind of gone through different scenarios and kind of prepared them for that moment. The one thing about law enforcement, unless you're in the moment, you can't say I've experienced it. With this, it allows us to set some different scenarios and kind of put those, situations in front of them. The other great thing about it is if another department, and there's other departments that have it, builds in a scenario, which we have the ability to as well. But let's say California Post does it, which is the equivalent of FDLE. They put a scenario, whatever it may be, we have access to that scenario as well. It also allows us, there's an additional cost to that. Say if we wanted to do the rec center, they would build out the rec center as if, just the space in it of itself, and then we can make scenarios coming out of our rec center specifically. I think the charge of that was $900 specifically, but we have the ability to do that within the village, certain, areas, just so the officers get to know that specific area. And, once again, just the feedback and the ability to see mistakes, see things that in that position saying, hey, we could have done this or we could have done that. That's the best way of learning as opposed to, again, just them being in the first time and just having that experience, I think goes a long way for the officers.
Thank you, Chief. Questions?
Yeah, I got a few questions. First of all, are you required to have so much training of this type that this feature, this will allow you to do?
Yes, so by FDLE standards, it's 40 hours, 4 years, which to be quite honest, isn't much. It's 10 hours per year.
Mm-hmm.
That includes, firearms training, pursuit training, domestic violence training. Mm-hmm. So 10 hours, honestly, to me, it's low bar. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there is a requirement by the FDLE, but I'm a big proponent of believer in training, so I always look to exceed that.
Okay, and then so the upgrades and stuff on it, like on some of my estimating hardware and stuff and software that we got, we pay so much a year for the upgrades when they make changes and stuff to it, as technology changes and things like that. So the $900 a year, does that cover all of that, or that?
So $1,300 would be for the maintenance of the yearly, in regards to any software change or any upgrades that goes with it. If we wanted to have a build out of a particular building within the village, that would be around $900. It depends, pricing depends on the actual size of the building or the area in which we're trying to capture into the virtual reality world. So it varies, but $1,300 will cover any upgrades to the system, any software changes. Mm-hmm. That will also allow us, if someone else does a scenario, say in Sacramento Police, in Florida, it's Gadsden County Sheriff's and Sanford Police Department that use it. If they upload any,
you'll have access to it.
We'll have access to that as well.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think it'd be great.
Lori? You done?
Yeah.
Any more questions? All right. That was one of my questions was, I know the video kind of mentioned they can detail your area into the video. I do think it'd be smart to do some of our most common areas and then do similar house sizes and residential, because we have small houses, large houses, maybe our popular shopping centers as well. I actually really support this. I think it's very smart with this choice because of the fact that we don't have large extra buildings laying around for big training facilities. I think it's very accessible for our officers. And I do like, and I really, really appreciate you guys preparing for anything. Because I know Assistant Chief McGrew always has the saying when you say, it never will happen here, but you just never really know. So I can really appreciate you guys constantly trying to get everyone trained for any kind of situation, because let's face it, we're a really low crime rate, which is amazing, but that means our officers aren't exactly out and about every day facing all kinds of crazy situations. So I think this would be great so they can be prepared, again, because you just never know who's living next door.
We always say criminals have no borders. The reality is, it's, if you look around our area, it happens in our areas, close to our areas, but, it's just.
You really don't. It's just like that couple keeping that child in that 8x8 box for, since 2017. I mean, how crazy is that?
But I can really appreciate this choice for this kind of system, because the fact that I think it fits in the village, it's accessible with the size and the use of it, and the fact that you point out it can be used almost daily and less drive time and disappearance. So I think it's a smart choice.
Thank you.
Kyle, have you talked to any of the departments that utilize this?
I have not. Chief McGrew, have you? I have not spoken to other people.
I'd be curious to find out how much they actually use it.
Right. I know Fort Myers, there's different variations of the company, I know. Haven't seen a lot of videos and a lot of, which I will tell you, this came to me at like 2:30 in the morning one night. I couldn't sleep. I kind of started reading on the police one, and I started looking, doing some research on other departments. But I know Fort Myers has, something similar in that regard, and they, from what, if I could remember correctly from the video, don't quote me, is I think they do it when they do their firearms training. They run it. Fort Myers is obviously a bigger police department. We have the advantage of that we're a lot smaller, and we have the ability that we have Lieutenant Smolin or Sergeant Yildiz that are on duty, or Sergeant Blanc, that have the ability to say, all right, come in here, let's go over some scenarios. So, for us, I honestly think we'll get a lot of use from it, not including the part of the community. As you all know, we started the Residence Academy. If all goes well and if it gets passed today, that's something I'd love to bring to our community also, so they could see some of the different scenarios and some of the things that the officers see in real time, in regards of what's going on, so.
I think it'd be fun doing that.
Well, Pastor Paul, I will tell you.
You get really skilled at what you're doing, but my golly, people, it's like a video game almost.
Well, it really is, and I will tell you, the person that was selling it, obviously, but we had everyone go in there, and Keith could attest to this. He says that we were probably one of the best departments, including Pastor Paul, who did a phenomenal job of de-escalation.
Yeah.
And honestly, just taking down the subject, but it was. It was just great. Even the individual was impressed. But my thing is, we just have to keep doing it in repetition. And again, the great thing about it is that one scenario could branch it off into 150 different scenarios. So it's never going to be, okay, I know this person's going to come out of this side. I know this person's coming out of there. The trainer could just change it up every time. Make it from a high stress situation to a lower stress. I just want to talk to someone. And to be honest, it's going to help the officers more on de-escalating and just communication, which when you look at all these police departments across the country, all the lawsuits in regarding it, should they have shot, shouldn't have they shot, we have the ability to kind of train and kind of drill it into their heads a little bit.
I think it's great.
So to piggyback on what Kyle was just kind of mentioning about usage, I know that you said that you can go back and watch the video and go over it with the officer and go over pros and cons and what they can do better. Does it log how much usage you have?
It does, right?
Not necessarily the video, but.
It stays inside the system itself.
It stays in the system, but
so
obviously.
So like in your report that you send to us, you could say, hey, we used it X amount of minutes this week or this month.
Yep, absolutely. It does do that. And the great thing about it is when you set up the system, for argument's sake, let's say we had it here, if I had on the goggles, you could watch it on the big screen. So though you're not seeing it, you could actually watch it. So the trainer is watching it not only on his computer, but he's also watching it on the big screen. And once it's done, then he'll play it back completely. And it's the same thing, like say an officer that's on probation or what have you. We'll put them in early on and just see how well they've developed throughout their course throughout their tenure to see if, if in regards to, okay, is this someone that uses common sense? Is this someone who knows how to talk to people? Is this someone who, who's shown a great ability to de-escalate situations? So it truly just, honestly, just looks at the officer and kind of helps develop the officer. And it, once you're on the screen, it's one of those, I play football and it says, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. It's just, your ability to say, okay, look, you could have done this, you should have done that. And it's kind of, okay, are they making the same mistakes? We continue to have additional training because of that, or is this person progressing to the point where, we feel comfortable?
Kyle, do you have
So, you said 10 hours is the low point of training
Yes,
on an
sir.
annual basis. How many hours do you say, or want your officers to go through on an annual basis utilizing this program?
Using this program? My goal, honestly, would be at least, and I've talked about this, and I'm lofty goals, at least once a week, a tour, they should be on this thing. So you're looking, I'm high end, I'm looking at 52 times at least during the year. They should, get on here and do at least 1 or 2 scenarios, depending, of course, on the call volume or, conditions or, if something else is going on. But ideally, I'd like to get them at least once a tour, if not more.
So to do that, how many officers would it take to do that?
It would take 2. So it would take the officer that's on duty, obviously, and then the training officer, if he is on duty, he would do it, so in essence 2. Or if we bring him off, come in and say, hey, I want this squad to go through it, then I would pay overtime for that sergeant, training sergeant, and he would take all 4 individually, so 1 officer at a time. Or if we do a different scenario, we'd bring in 2 officers depending on, time and, of course, what's going on in the village.
I just see it as a big expense, and I'm not against it, I would be for it, but I would want to talk to someone that already has it and see if they're still using it, and if they think they would, keep their investment going next year. Yeah, I think someone would be honest with you, like, no, it didn't meet it to our standards, and we never get the people here in time, so that's the one thing that I would be concerned about. I would definitely want to reach out to someone that's using the like program, so they're continuing to use it.
I understand your concern. I got to tell you honestly, I think if it's a bigger department and there's so much stuff going on, I'd see it'd probably take a backseat to everything else. But this, with us being a small department and honestly having some officers that really, I see the need for repetition. It's something that, as long as I'm here, as far as, but I could just see a continual use just because we have to continue to improve. So if it's something that we buy and we put on the shelf, then honestly, I wouldn't be before you asking for us to move the money there. It's just something that has to be utilized as far as I'm concerned, because in the long run, liability reduction, we're going through accreditation, that's all part of this. Accreditation is, it's not to stop someone from suing us, it's from us to saying we have these standards and practices that meet along with everyone else in the state of Florida, and so we have the same practices and standards as they do. So, it's not gonna stop someone from suing the village, but we can say, hey, we are training properly, we are doing this, and, we continue to do this and improve, so.
Are we not gonna go to the other municipalities? Are we still gonna keep doing that? Like go to gardens once in a while?
Well,
Or
with
have
this, we
them
would-
come to us and play with this?
So we wouldn't have to use their, I forget what their simulators called, it used to be called FATS, which is kind of like this, but you need the room. We wouldn't utilize that any longer. We would have our own in that regard. Our gardens, we would use if we wanted to use their indoor firing range. One of the things that passed today in the consent was we have an agreement with Martin County in regards to also using their facilities, their outdoor facilities at no cost to us. So in regards to the live training, with our firearms, our shotgun and rifles, we'll still be doing that at the range, but this is more, just to saying, okay, de-escalation and other things.
It's a situational training. I mean, whether it's fire, police, whether it's military, the whole idea, as you've already indicated, is to train and be prepared to be able to handle a set of circumstances which you hope don't ever happen. But if they do, you want to be able to handle them properly and hopefully have an optimal outcome. And I see this technology which is emerging as you said, a vehicle to allow us to do that and do it more frequently so our people are better prepared, and to do it and more cost efficiently ultimately. So,
Vice Mayor, I will tell you, I'm sorry, Mayor, in regards to the VR part of it is, it's similar to, like they said, in 1984, they started the company. It used to be one screen, and going through it, I can tell you, I came from a large department, that we would use twice a year when we went through firearms training and everything else through state standards. So this is similar to that, though it's different in meaning virtual simulator, but it's still in essence the same thing. It's scenario-based training. So in that regard, it does get utilized.
Well, you said Pastor Paul went through this, so I don't want to speak for Greg, but with the new recreation center being completed, we're going to have an adult activity room, and we want to reach out to our citizenry, we could set it up in there, and you guys could not only train in there, but we could allow some of the folks, some of the residents, if they were interested in coming in and seeing what it was all about. So, all right, any other questions? Can I have a motion?
Ms. Young has some
Oh,
questions.
I'm sorry. Yes, she did.
And if I will, just repeat that this is a special law enforcement fund, can only be used for certain things. It's funded out of the forfeiture money, it's not tax dollars that's funding this project. Hugh, and we talked about a little bit this before, do you mind coming up and explaining our internal form for Ms. Young? She had a question, just the way the internal form reads. And so she'd ask that you would explain that, please.
Yes, certainly. Good evening,
Let me
Mayor.
pull it up so everybody can refer to
Vice
this account.
Mayor's, Vice Mayor, good evening. Basically, we have to present to you a balanced budget, which essentially means revenues must equal expenditures. And so the chief is requesting an increase in his budget of $62,500. And so if expenditures are proposed to be increased, we have to also increase revenues. On the screen, the appropriation of fund balance is analogous to revenue. And so the total there is $125,000. And if it were strictly accountants sitting here this evening, we would have debits and credits as the header, which you'd have the credits on the right-hand side and the debits on the left. But for the sake of a lay reader, a lay person, we have to specifically indicate which accounts will be increased and decreased. So if the chief is asking for an increase of $62,500 in expenditures, we therefore have to also increase revenues, which is the appropriation of fund balance, by a like amount to be able to keep a balanced budget. And that's essentially what's being depicted here. The 125, it does look, from a optics standpoint, it looks a little bit like it's on balance. However, the nature of the accounts are different. The first one is tantamount to a revenue. The others, coupled together, will make up $62,500, which represents an increase in expense. Hopefully that clarifies.
I think the confusing thing, you, is that you listed each item and you've totaled the three items together, but as you said, you've got disparate items. You've got one which is money coming out of the, or money that's in the special law enforcement budget of $62,500, which you're going to utilize. You've got an expense of $62,500. The two really cancel each other out.
Yeah.
So when you look at this form, you're right. You're figuring out, well, you've listed each item, but you haven't taken into account the fact that one is a revenue item, one is an expense item, and the two together equals zero, so they balance out.
Yeah, precisely. We're on the same page.
Okay. Thank you. Clear
The
as mud.
nature of the account, and I know it, everyone in here doesn't have an accounting degree, but when we do the accounting entry behind the scenes, we will be crediting $62,500, which is one instance. In the case, and I'll confuse the crowd even further, using budgetary accounting, the debits and credits are switched. So the expenditures will be credited, the revenues will be debited. So in a nutshell, you will have a state of homeostasis. So the scale will balance, but on here to the reader, which we are assuming is a layperson, we have to specifically tell them what our intent is. It is to increase expenses and increase revenues. And what separates the the account, if you look at the second to the last set of digits, the 399 represents revenues, and the 600 and the 500 series are expenses, and I'm going too much into the minutia, but.
This is one of those situations
Yeah.
that stayed at Holiday Inn
But-
Express
but
last night does
basically,
not
in a-
work.
Yeah. In a nutshell, revenues must equal expenditures. And that's what this is.
I mean, I
purporting
understand it,
to
it's
be.
just when you look at,
Yeah.
you're saying to the layperson's gonna look at this and even be more confused. I don't know if it's a matter of the form, if there's a different form we could utilize, or if this is something that's required or necessary, but, yeah, it doesn't do justice to the transaction.
Yeah, and I agree with you from an optical standpoint. What we can do is put debits and credits. You'll be able to then visualize that it's balancing, but then it begs the question, what is a debit and a credit? So we can ideally change the form. We just wanted to be mindful that the audience was not replete with accounting.
We'll have a conversation about the presentation of that to make
Yeah,
it for
I
everybody,
agree.
so when we.
I would be in
Debits
favor
and
of changing
credits.
that form, yes.
Okay.
Right.
'Cause
I
think
I
that would
agree,
make
I
more sense,
agree.
I think.
Thank you, Hugh. I do have a couple
Definitely.
questions for the chief as well. Can you just confirm the cost? You talked a little bit about it, and I don't, she's online, but this.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep,
My questions were answered, you don't have to go through them.
perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Molly.
I do have actually one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these funds paying for this coming from Officer Eric and Officer Loney?
Yes, part of this is for the
What a
one.
hard worker he is.
Yes, the one of them that has cleared, that we received 91,000 a few months back. Yeah, that's part of this. Like I said earlier, he's doing a great job, he honestly is. I joke with him and stuff, but he's doing a
I just like to
phenomenal job.
continuously point that out because I know they're not here on a daily basis. So they're still a part of the Tequesta team.
Absolutely. No, he's
We
doing
call it
phenomenal.
Eric training.
Yes.
He pays for himself many times over.
I know he gets to ride on the boat on the weekends.
Yes.
That's his downtime, right?
Yes, exactly.
I just want to make sure.
So Councilman Brennan did ask a question. Are we going to invite other agencies to come here and participate with us?
Yep, I spoke briefly to the manager on that. I think it kind of goes, as far as people have always been receptive and have always worked with us, so I don't see, unless there's any reason why we can't reciprocate in that regard.
It's like you always say, Kyle, be neighborly, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can I have a motion, please, to move this forward?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. All right, thank you, Chief. Moving on to item number 18. This is further conversation on the opening of the Recreation Center, hours and timeline. Mr. Corbett.
Chief, you're welcome at the rec center anytime. As long as we have officers walking around, that's a good thing. This item on the agenda we've spoken about before. I think we've narrowed it down to our request for hours of operation, as you see. And we're looking at a soft opening for VIP dignitaries on April 8th and this would be the ribbon cutting from 10 to 12. And then on April 9th would be our actually grand opening. And from that grand opening, from April 9th, 90 days, from that point, we will be recommending that we have just residents only until the July 1st.
So the reason why, we brought it in this format, there was obviously some, difference of opinion on it. We, in order to get to a resolution, need a vote on it, and so that's why we present it in this fashion. Can have additional discussion, but ultimately we need to be able to have approval to move forward. Also tied to this item is the staffing. We sat down, looked at the staffing and the budget amendment that's coming forward for some additional part-time staff to cover the hours of operation and the workload. So with that, so for discussion, staff can answer any questions.
Okay, so open for council discussion. Kyle, would you like to start?
I'm okay moving forward because I understand the timing of everything. I would like to see us add hours on Sunday. That's part of the discussion. I know we talked about that last time.
Can I interject a little bit
Yes, you
about our
can.
thought process? And Greg, you jump in here too. I know that Ms. Young originally brought this up, and I think, and she can speak or try to attempt to say yes or no, or, but, you know, I think, you know, having the Sundays available for reservations only loosens or lessens our staff requirement, but also gives us a chance to rent the facility. You know, there's not a lot of opportunity to rent the facility, birthday parties, things like that on Sunday, and so then there's a revenue aspect that comes with that. So less expenditures, more revenue makes me happy, and so that's kind of the thought process with that. If we get through this 90-day period and it looks like there, you know, people are still having issues with that, or we're not getting reservations, then maybe we consider additional hours later. But for the start of this process, and that's why we did it that way. But we're at your you know, decision, so we can do that. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of our thought process with that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it would be nice to continue to have this conversation as this continues to progress.
Well, I do think as we go along and the facility opens, they're going to be monitoring utilization, you know, where are we with respect to overall capacity, how are we doing from a staff standpoint? So I think we will have an ongoing conversation. Lori?
So I'm good with the hours for now, only because, again, I go back to just logistically, I know we don't have enough staffing hired and trained yet to cover a guaranteed open Sunday. I actually think the Sunday reservations is probably a happy compromise for now. You know, I'm gonna say, I mean, the only thing I just am a little hesitant on is the residents only for 90 days. If a child's coming in with a Tequesta resident, I'd like to see that child come in and not be told no. That's really the only thing I just want to make sure happens. I'm not saying children can come, well, one, they have to be with an adult anyways, most of them, based on their age. I don't think anyone's gonna come in with 30 kids or anything, but if there's one or two with their kids, I would like to see them enter. And plus, on another note too, because I know you follow Parks and Rec and sports, spring sports is in session until like mid-May, so, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of kids busy in the afternoons and on the weekends still.
Bruce?
Yeah, and I agree with you about being able to allow some of the other children and stuff to come in. I mean, one lives across the street and he can't come any of them and get in. So, I mean, I really totally disagree with that aspect of it. I know it's creating a little bit of a debacle on how you monitor that or police that or control that, but they're not going to bring a basketball team with them that's outside of the village and stuff. I just don't see that happening. If it does, you know, I mean, an isolated instance here and there is not going to be a deal breaker for anybody, I don't think. But so, you know, I would like to see the availability for these kids and stuff to utilize it during that period of time. And I'm just curious as to why y'all are rotating the hours from, you know, one day it closes at 6, the next day it opens, it closes at 8, and it's 6 and 8, and you know, what days did they open till 8, or we got to give them a call and stuff. I mean, so what was y'all's thinking on that?
Staffing.
Nothing, no staffing?
We wanted to pick 2 days out of the week that were gonna be extended hours, and we knew that we could handle the staffing on the 2 extended days. And, you know, we're not, you know, we have nothing to go on. These hours are almost like the hours that we had in the old building. Tuesdays and Thursdays were our long nights, so if somebody wanted to do a homeowners association meeting or our gymnastics class or whatever that went extended hours, we picked these 2 days so that we could staff them.
That makes sense. So how are y'all coming on hiring? I know that we talked about that the other night, and it was kind of slow, huh?
Yeah. Marlene and her department are doing a fantastic job. They're doing the best we can to recruit, and you know, we've had 2 interviews, and one is actually a gentleman that works for Doug in Public Works, and he did a fantastic job. And we interviewed this other lady, but she has a conflict at night. So you know, we have applicants coming in, but it is an issue.
Okay.
I mean, I like what Greg's put forth here. I understand what you're saying, Lori, about quote-unquote children. This is not, to me, this is not an issue about children, however. It's an issue of, one, making sure that we can open the facility. We're going to be registering. We have 6,200 residents who declare themselves Tequesta residents in the sense that they are here at least 6 months in a day. Most of those 6,200 are probably here year-round. We have another probably 1,000-plus residents who have Tequesta addresses that live within our municipal boundaries who are seasonal. So Greg and his staff have the challenge of registering all those people through the software system, being able to account and accommodate all those people, opening the center, making sure we do it and do it well. And it'll give us a chance also to assess capacity utilization. Now, that may not be something we're fully informed of by July 1st. We may need to continue to monitor that in July and August. But as I said last time, the last thing I would want to see happen, I mean, we may find all of our residents are utilizing this facility at an optimal level. And there could even be times when some residents can't get on the basketball court, or can't do something because other residents are using it. But if I were a resident and I couldn't get into the facility to use it, whether it was the kids' game room or the basketball court, because there were non-residents that were using it ahead of me, and I'm the taxpayer and I paid for this facility, I would not be a happy camper. And what I'm going to say to this council is, I think we need to go non-resident for the first 90 days. I think if we're not in agreement on how we move forward with the non-residents post that period of time, then I think it's our obligation, as we've talked about on some other issues, to take this to the Tequesta community and get their input directly, and whether we do that through surveys or other mechanisms. But I don't think the 5 of us should be making that final determination. I think the community has to come back to us and say, hey, wait a minute, do I want my neighbors who are not financially supporting this facility to be able to use it for free, or do we want to have, and again, I'm not saying we shouldn't be neighborly, but do we want to have some type of membership situation where if we have capacity, if we can bring other people in, we go to the 33469 zip code, which I think Kyle suggested before, and we give them an opportunity to join. And you may have a family membership, and it may be a certain amount. It could be monthly, quarterly, annually. But I know other municipalities have done this, and maybe if you're paying annually, it's $500 a year. I'm just throwing out a number. If you're paying monthly, maybe it's $50. I mean, if you think about it, $50 a month is less than what people pay for their cable bills, their internet services, going to Starbucks if they go a few times a month. So we're not establishing anything we wouldn't be establishing anything that's onerous if we were to go that route. But we would be maybe taking a course that says, okay, we want to be neighborly, but there is a cost that our residents are absorbing to provide this facility, and all we're asking to do is to share in that. But I think that comes later. I think that comes as we get closer to the July 1st date, and we can have a lot more discussion about this.
Lori, what age do you think children that you would like to see access there, like under age 16?
Well, what's the age where they don't need an adult?
14.
So 14 and under?
I would say that because,
okay.
And I kind of asked you this last time when most of our building is going to be providing programming, which is going to have instructors managing their signups, and how many people are going to be limited in that class. Like obviously they aren't going to say up 30 people if their limit is 15. They have to cap it. When I think about that, when you talk about residents only, it's not that I'm not against giving it to residents only.
We're not talking about classes here.
I know, but our building isn't the Taj Mahal. So most of it's be programming, which is going to allow non-residents with a fee for the class. So when we're talking about open community rec center to come in and use it, we're talking about basketball, pickleball, and the game room. And for me, I just don't know if there's going to be a lot of adults necessarily. Again, I just go back to the kids though, because I think mostly it's going to be just like it was before, majority of our youth using this building, and they will have an adult with them. But I'm absolutely not going to say no to a child 14 and under or under 14 because they're with their friend.
So I'm gonna make a motion. I'm gonna say 16 because if you're not able to drive and you can't go somewhere else, I would like for them to have the ability to come with a friend to be able to participate. And I know that we're going to be looking at non-resident fees, and that's why until we get to that point, I'd like to make a motion to accept this, approve this, but allow 16 and under, resident, non-resident, until we come to an agreement on a non-resident fee going forward.
Okay.
So
that's my motion.
Are you saying only 16 and under?
I'm saying 16 and under, would be allowed to participate.
With an adult.
14 and under has to be an adult,
With a
15 and 16 does not.
Okay, so if somebody comes in and they've got 5 friends with them.
Yep. And have
Play
adult-
basketball, you're gonna let the 5 non-residents come in, which might preclude residents being able to use that basketball court at that time.
Yes.
So are you
Okay, I
gonna be,
completely
no offense,
disagree.
but I mean, are you gonna be mad if you go in and you're gonna tell a child, go away, because I wanna shoot hoops?
Yes.
If I'm coming in, if I'm a group of residents and I'm coming in to use the facility and I'm paying for it, and this group of people are not, am I gonna be happy about that?
Can I call for a vote?
I'm not gonna be happy about that.
Okay.
So.
There's a motion.
I will second the motion.
Can you repeat the motion?
Yeah.
The motion is to approve this, what's been presented to us by Greg, but adding that any non-resident 16 and under can participate in the open gym and open events at the new rec center, knowing that we are going to have a non-resident conversation about fees in the future.
Okay, I got a quick question before you
I
actually.
don't want to drag this out any longer, but I brought this up last time. With the younger kids, sometimes the non-resident parent would be with them too, with their friends that are residents. So are we not going to allow, I'm thinking for younger children, would that parent not be allowed in? Because I think this just kind of gets very convoluted.
I would say they can come in.
I think this is a very slippery slope, and I think you're opening yourself up to, again, if you want to let non-residents in, then I say we take this to the community and we ask for significant community input on this item, because I am not comfortable allowing non-residents at this point in time. I think there should be residents only, go through the 90 days, we'll have continued discussion, we'll look at the capacity utilization, and then we can make a determination if it makes sense to allow non-residents, and if we do, is there going to be a cost associated with their ability to attend? I don't want to do day passes or day items, because that means Greg's staff's got to register people, they've got to collect money on a daily basis, so that makes no sense. So I think it has to be a membership type situation, but.
I just don't foresee it becoming an issue for 90 days because there's still gonna be school in session during the day. Again, we have a lot of activities still going on for spring, and those are usually jam-packed through the week. I mean, there's still a lot going on. It's not like we're in the middle of summer and there's nothing, or in winter.
Well, Greg, I know you've heard some comments from people
So-
outside our area about this facility. I don't know if that's not anything.
I have a
you can share.
motion and a call for a vote.
Do you want to add to the motion that they have to be with a Tequesta resident?
The children under 14 and under?
Yes.
I can add that to the motion.
Okay, like just so that we don't have people from Gardens or Jupiter just coming in, like they have to be with a Tequesta resident.
Yeah.
So does the seconder accept that friendly amendment? You must, I
Yes.
guess, since you
Yes.
suggested it.
Okay, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion then. All in favor?
Aye.
We're voting on these changes though, right? It's gonna, yeah, okay, I'm in favor.
Aye.
Okay. No. So it's 4-1. It passes. All right, now we're moving on to item number 19, a resolution of the Village Council of Tequesta, Florida, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year general fund budget, providing an effective date and other purposes. Greg, this is you.
Yes, Jeremy and I worked on this together in great detail, and we actually did a lot of compromising, and we came to a nice, I think, point that we are going to be able to take, to create 4 part-time positions and spread them out throughout 80 hours for the week, and use them however we need to cover the facility. The funding is coming from the Paradise Park to cover the cost.
Okay, discussion from council.
I don't have anything.
No. Lori?
I mean, it's needed.
Okay. I'm fine with what's being proposed here, so can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Hey Hugh, this budget amendment sheet looks good.
Money man.
All right, moving on to item number 20. This is an ordinance again, first reading. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, and you have two ordinances, the next two agenda items. These are very much, in my opinion, by way of housekeeping, just to conform little parts of our code to recent changes to state law. Ordinance 522, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 38, Impact Fees, Sections 38, 68, and 98 to update impact fee payment requirements in accordance with recent changes to state law, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 38 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading. Very briefly, our current code indicates that we will not issue a building permit until impact fees have been paid. A recent change to state law requires basically a 10-day, they get 10 days to pay that impact fee, and then after the building permit's issued, and then if they don't pay it, then we can take remedial action and do a stop work order or void the impact fee, but that will bring our code into conformance with the statutory change from last session.
So we can do a stop work order, but we cannot rescind the...
Right, we used to be able to not issue the permit. Now we have to issue the permit, and if they don't pay within 10 days, then we can do a stop work order and rescind the permit, so...
No, we can only a stop work order, or we can actually rescind it?
Let me put my finger back on that language. This building permit will be of no force and effect, and a stop work order shall be issued.
So it's rescinded. Okay, just wanted to clarify that. All right. Questions from the council?
None.
Lori? Kyle?
Motion approved.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item 21, Keith, you said this is a follow-on to the one you just covered.
0622, ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 62, Planning and Development, Article 5, Development Agreements, Section 62, 156, to amend, to update instances where development agreements can be amended or canceled in accordance with changes to state law, providing that each and every other section, subsection in Chapter 62 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. So this is first reading. The way this would work, you enter into a developer agreement. Developer is going to develop a bunch of land. They may subdivide that into different parcels and sell the different parcels to different owners. Some circumstance might arise where you want to amend the developer agreement, but it's really only going to affect not all the parcels that have been subdivided. So and previously, even if it didn't affect those other parcels, you had to get the consent of the property owners or their successors and assigns, even if it didn't affect them. This changes the law to allow us to make that amendment and only have to get the approval of the parcel owners that are being affected.
That are being impacted.
So this one's actually not a bad thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a good thing.
But that in a nutshell is what this one does.
Okay. And again, I forgot this on the last one. This is an ordinance, so it is a public meeting. Open to comments from the public. Okay, seeing none, open to council. Anybody? All right.
Motion approved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 5-0. Okay, moving on to item 22. This is a resolution authorizing a write-off of uncollectible and inactive water utility accounts as identified in the exhibit, and authorizing the manager to take the necessary actions. Mr. Hammond.
All right. Hello again. So as you know, the water utility is an enterprise fund funded solely from the rates and fees collected for the services provided. Vast majority of our customers pay on time, and but as in any business, we have a very small amount that don't. Similar to what the fire department brings on an annual basis, we have a list of uncollectible accounts. Our normal collection process is to in the order, we assess a late fee, we follow up with phone calls, and then follow up with a letter, and then ultimately shut off water. Our bad debt or uncollectible accounts have not been looked at since at least before 2017. And so our team over the past 6 months has been going through those accounts, making phone calls, reaching out to each one of those accounts and or old accounts, and trying to come to a resolution on those. And so what's brought before you now is a list of all accounts that are older than 3 years old, that have, again, been contacted on multiple, or attempted to contact on multiple occasions. The resulting list is 71 accounts totaling nearly $10,000. These have been reviewed with Hugh and his team. Moving forward, we're putting in place a process that these will be brought to you, a much smaller list will be brought to you on an annual basis.
Questions from the council on this item? Bruce?
How did somebody run up a $3,000 water bill?
That was my question.
That's one of those bills.
I mean, I was actually gonna, reach out to you guys, and I mentioned it the other day, is that my water bill typically runs about $24 a month. Well, it was like $140-something a month.
You're finally on the system.
But I left my water hose on in my pool for like a day, and I think that's what ran it up. So I was thinking about asking y'all for credit for my stupidity, but I decided not to. But
we do have a customer portal that you can sign up, and you can get alerts if your water use goes over a certain amount per day, week, or month.
It'll beep my phone?
Yeah. Yep, you can get an email or a text on it.
Huh. Well, as I continue to get older, man, I might take that into consideration.
Call in, we're happy to help you get that set up.
Thank you, pal.
If you set it up too low, it dings you every day.
You gotta find that Miss Marsh has left, but I've worked with her to get that, get
I'm
her
getting
dialed
close.
in to
I'm
just the
getting
right
close.
amount.
You may want the reminder.
Oh, yeah.
Lori?
No, I was gonna say, don't forget public comment, because I think there is.
I make a motion to approve.
Wait,
Second.
Mr. Bradford.
Nope.
It's a quickie, and Matt will probably answer it quickly. If someone gets their water turned off when they don't pay their bill, how is it that you're having, I don't understand why we have write-offs. I mean, they get no water if they don't pay. Isn't that the way it works?
So a lot of these are, these are old, and so that practice, that collections process, including turning off water, was not always
Enforced.
Yeah, most of these are in 17. You get some in 18, most of them are in 17.
Some even older, 12, 13.
Yeah, so that was not as disciplined in application as it should have been. So that's part of it. And then there are a pretty good number in here that are rentals, and so we have that last, a lot of these are that last bill that was not paid, and there's different requirements on how we can go after rentals versus the actual property owner. So that's kind of the...
And our billing's delayed too, the water process, and it was like 60 days before we would send out a bill.
Yep, so we bill in arrears.
Yep.
The usage for 30 days, you get a bill about 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks after, and then you have 30 days to pay after that.
90 days
so
or so.
There's a there is a lag.
But that's getting smaller, right?
It is. But I mean, to answer your question, it's the discipline and application of that has not always been there.
Honestly, this is not that much. Right off.
Still more than I'd like, but
Yeah.
Except for the one. The one that was 3,000.
You take the one out.
Well, there's,
Yeah, most of them were small.
So motion approved.
Yes, there was a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous. Moving on to item 23. Mr. Hammond, this is you again.
Yep, and so as part of our process at the water plant, one of the chemicals that is used is hydrogen peroxide. It's used to oxidize sulfur as well as to increase the DO or dissolved oxygen in the concentrate before it's disposed of. We have had a agreement, a relationship with Evoqua Water Technologies for, I think we're coming up on 10 years, that we purchased the hydrogen peroxide from Evoqua Water Technologies, but it's also there's also a lease agreement that's part of it, or a lease that's part of it for the storage and metering or chemical metering equipment in order to inject it. And so this is two parts, a sole source agreement with Evoqua Water Technologies to continue that relationship, as well as a purchase order requisition for the purchase of the hydrogen peroxide for the remainder of the fiscal year. We've been getting beat up on chemical increases over the last year. This is actually our 2.2% increase is pretty good from what we've seen or been experiencing over the last year.
Council discussion, any comments? Lori?
I'm good.
Okay, motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passed unanimously. We added one more item. This is the charge station agreement. At the last discussion, the Vice Mayor had placed a maximum amount on an annual basis, and when they came back with the pricing, it exceeded that at maximum amount. So we need to reconsider this item. I guess it was what, maximum 2,300, then they came back at 2,400 a year for 3 years.
So it actually came out less, I don't know, because of the years, but the original quote that we got for the 5 years was $2,040 a year for 5 years. That's $10,000 because we shrunk it down to 3 years. I guess we got a discount, but it came out to like $7,000 for the charging stations over a 3-year period. So it came out $2,400. The authorization was $2,300, so that's why it's before you again. And we obviously didn't have this information when we put the agenda out. That's why it's being added to the dais, but it has been considered before in the past. And so I think it gives you guys the opportunity to pass or however you guys want to move forward.
Okay. Any conversation on this matter? No. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. It's unanimous. All right. This brings us to any other matters. Does anyone on the council have any other items they would like to discuss this evening?
Nope, I'm good.
Lori?
I do.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure listening to and hearing your stories and your
well,
input.
thank you. I appreciate
You've been a great addition.
Well, I
It's sad to
appreciate
see you
that.
go.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure sitting to your left.
Yep, same here. Yeah, I wish I had thought that I had the time to do it again, because I do enjoy it.
Well, it was super fun when you were here.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You brought a lot of great knowledge to our group.
Thank you.
Hey, you can always come back.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Can I make a request of him? Because
Absolutely.
talking about stories, can you tell that whack-a-mole story again that you talked about that one time? Because that was pretty funny.
That was a good one.
I'm just
I don't know,
kidding.
which one was that?
I forget what it was, but you were talking about how you used to, when you were a kid, go to the circus and you guys used to play whack-a-mole for like a penny a pop or something,
Yeah.
a nickel a pop, so.
I thought you were talking about that rat with the little rat that goes in the hole.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
We were talking about fair games and you were talking
Sorry,
about
we should have ended the meeting before I said that, but.
Oh, that's okay.
She's over there taking notes on it right now, so.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Y'all please take cupcakes with you.
There are cupcakes for you, Bruce.
Yeah, those are cupcakes.
I was gonna eat one.